Hey everyone, welcome to episode 62 of Stock Talk with Josh and
Nico,
Nico. What's up? How you doing?
I'm doing good. Just got off work. Happy to be here. We got a new guest today. Going to talk about some real estate and stuff, so I'm very excited.
Yeah, go ahead and introduce our guest for us.
Well, I will let you introduce yourself and tell us what you do and everything
Well,
like
we
that.
at least gotta give like a warm welcome. Like, welcome to the show.
Appreciate that.
How was the drive? It's
Appreciate
cold
that.
as
Drive was easy.
HE hockey sticks outside,
You know,
but
no 80/94 traffic, no 65 traffic. So drive was easy. But no, my name's Alex Nickla. I'm born and raised in Crown Point, and I had at 18 professional wise at 18 years old I dropped out of college. I went to IU in Bloomington, and I was there, and I was just like, what I wanted to do. I started to study things related to personal finance, related to investing, related to entrepreneurship. And I was there, and oddly enough, as kind of the group of people I was in and where I was from in Crown Point, it's like if you don't go to college, you're kind of a failure. So like I was there, but everything I was learning, kind of getting into, I'm like, this is not the route for me. So I left school, and now I own a real estate sales business. I started just as an agent, built our team up. We have a real estate sales team, and so I'm a real estate agent. We have a residential and commercial team, and then a real estate investor now. So
Awesome.
that's kind of like the 30,000 foot view.
oh, cool,
Okay,
cool. So were you
awesome.
still like in your first year too when you
Yeah.
dropped out? Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, dude, first semester, and at Crown Point,
Wow.
like I was one of those like naturally a B student, you know what I mean? Yeah,
Mhm.
A's and B's, but like so I was decent in school, but like I had zero interest once I got to college because I was up till 2, 3 in the morning studying YouTube University, man.
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
just on YouTube and reading books and got introduced to books like Rich Dad Poor Dad and all
Yeah.
the and Think and Grow Rich and started educating myself. And at that point, I got a couple different mentors too, and I was like, this is just not where I'm meant to be. So at
Mhm.
that point, went to my mom and my dad, and I was like, hey, I think I'm gonna, I can always go back.
Yeah.
My mom and I would have been the first one in my family to graduate from college.
Oh,
So
okay.
Oh, okay.
so yeah, so my mom was kind of distraught. My dad's like, yeah, son, that's great,
Oh,
whatever.
really?
And so
So was that pressure more for like her or like just people around you? Like,
no, good question. I think it was more just her. She was like she loved the idea of like no one's ever done it. You'd be the 1st one,
Right.
and she always figured that I would just because of kind of how I was in school. I usually did honors classes and stuff like that. I wasn't,
Mhm.
but then once I got to college, I'm like, this has nothing to do with where I want to go. And
Yeah.
everything that I was learning was really heavily related to real estate investing, where I got most of my interest. The people I learned from the most and
Mhm.
connected with the most. But yeah, as far as my mom, man, she wanted it, for her son to do it. My older brother didn't go to school; he went straight into working too. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, he ended up being the one to get his degree like years later.
Hmm.
Oh,
And so
really?
he
Okay.
did it. Yeah, he
Oh.
did it. But so yeah.
Okay, so what point did you start investing in stocks?
So stock wise, stocks are a place where I've done so little as far in comparison to real estate. So I started at probably about 21 just in index funds. At Vanguard and Fidelity accounts. X amount every month went into those. And that was it. I've never picked stocks. So it was just money that went in every month, and that was kind of it. And then eventually ended up at some point taking the money out and buying some real estate deals from there. And then now, I have a great financial advisor, and I'm like, hey man, this is not my space. Here's the money.
Right.
Here's the
Yeah,
money
there
I'm
you go.
comfortable with you playing with. And their strategy is, hey, you're going to make a lot more doing what you do.
Mhm.
And so by the time I was 26, I became a millionaire net worth wise through real estate. So I was 26 years old when that happened.
Well, that's something I'd like to ask you isn't the statistic that it's a certain percentage, I want to say it's 70% or something, but it's the majority of millionaires make it from real estate.
Yeah, it's a heavy. And if you look at the actual reasoning, it's typically going to be because a lot of people that asset's coming from their house, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it's coming from their home, and just you stay in a home long enough,
Yeah.
you're going to get enough from it. But yes, the overwhelming majority of millionaires do it because of real
That's
estate.
true. Okay, so what would you say I want to see what are the pros and cons of real estate investing versus stock market. I know you don't have as much
Yeah.
experience in
Yes.
stocks, but what would you say still are the pros and the cons?
Yeah, I think. Well, first off, start with the pros with stocks. I don't have to manage tenants' properties.
Yeah.
I'm not keeping up with the actual maintenance or maintaining of a property, and that is something where people get into real estate and they talk about passive income, right? Very, very, very few forms of investing are actually totally passive when it
Yeah.
comes to real estate. There are some, but typically it's not until you're at a certain level, right? So, or well, we'll get into that as we go. So on the stock side, it's nice that you don't have to maintain tenants. Like if you're a rental property investor, right? You got tenants to maintain with. If you're a commercial property investor, typically have tenants. They usually maintain stuff a little bit less. So that's one thing. You're not dealing with damages and things that have to happen with properties. So I'd say that's kind of a benefit of stocks. Benefit of real estate is definitely going to be on the end where what do you get? Number one, tax advantages. Number two, appreciation. And number three, cash flow. So you can get all three with real estate. You can't always get that with stocks, right? So you can get appreciation over time, right? Very few stocks are going to give you dividends compared to most real estate assets, right? And not as many tax advantages when it comes to stocks almost in general, because once you sell, you're going to get taxed on your gains. Within real estate, there's so many different, and the two main reasons for me that I'm most interested, I mean, all three of those I freaking love, but the cash flow purpose and then the tax advantage situation is something that if we go into, it's very, very interesting.
Well, is the general idea that you can take the sale and put it into another asset without paying
that's one way.
taxes?
Yeah, so that's referred to as that's what people often refer to as a 1031 exchange, which is you own a property, and as long as you buy a like property or greater than, you can sell it. Let's say you made $100,000 in appreciation. You can take that, no capital gains tax, and put it into another piece of real estate. You are deferring your taxes. But that's honestly, man, like once I really started to understand buying real estate through things such as cost segregation and bonus depreciation, those are things where you start to realize, holy crap, there's a lot with real estate that's a lot farther than 1031 exchange. I've never done a 1031 exchange. However, but in my business, and I'm very blessed to have the income and business that I have now, and we've had for a few years, but through legal ways that the tax code is written by buying real estate, last year I paid very, very minimal to zero in taxes, and based on my income bracket, it's pretty crazy.
Okay, so with those two strategies you just said, I don't think I've ever heard of those before. So can you break down what does that look like?
I'll do it as simple as possible. So these are IRS codes. So if you are looking, I would recommend talking to an accountant 100% because I'm not that. But the way that it works is, let's say, when you buy a piece of real estate, first off, there's one of the tax benefits of real estate is called depreciation. So what this means is, now you hear that and you think, well, I thought real estate appreciates. It does. It does. Statistically, before COVID, it was 3.6% year over year for a piece of real estate.
Now jumped up.
Yeah. After COVID, it was
jumped up like crazy.
Like crazy. Yep. The last 5 years, like 44%, 45%. So, so your property appreciates, but there's parts of that property that don't. For example, that cabinet is not going to last forever. That flooring is going to wear. Right, that water heater is going to go out. So what happens is when you buy a piece of rental, buy a piece of real estate, specifically a home, multifamily, apartment buildings, right, things like that. You go in, and commercial, you can do this as well. But they do something what's called a cost segregation study. So the way that works, just to keep it super simple. Let's say you buy a house for $100,000. That cost segregation study is done by an engineering firm. And they'll go in there and they'll look at all that stuff. How much flooring do you have? How many cabinets? How much this? All the stuff that's going to depreciate, because not all that stuff will last forever. The land doesn't count. The land, the IRS says that'll appreciate, right? The outside of the property, like brick and things like that, the concrete, that stuff will appreciate. It's not going to go anywhere. But the things inside will depreciate. So they take a study and they'll say, okay, $100,000 property, we believe roughly 50,000 of that can, through a cost segregation study, can be used for what's called bonus depreciation. Now, this is one of the ways that I really learned that this is really how people in real estate, like the rich, get richer. Because what happens is, let's say, for example, you have that cost segregation study. There's $50,000 worth of what they're going to call depreciating value. If you don't do that study, a simple, what's referred to as straight line depreciation is that $100,000, that house, the IRS says you can depreciate that over 27 and a half years. Okay. So you take $100,000 and divide that by 27 and a half. You get that amount towards paying down your tax bill. Okay. Or I should say taking that off of your taxable income.
Yeah.
So for easy note, like I'll pull up my calculator while we're doing it and give you an example. If you don't do one of these cost segregation studies, the way that it works, and I'll show you guys like an actual example, but you got $100,000, divide that by 27 and a half years. You can take $3,600. So let's say next year your income's $100,000. I could decrease my $100,000 income now to be taxable based on 96.
Right,
Okay.
right.
But what a cost segregation study does is it says, okay, that property's 100 grand. And let's just say, I'm just going to keep this easy numbers. It's not exactly, but let's say roughly $50,000 of that is what's referred to as bonus depreciation, which what means is instead of taking that over 27 and a half years,
Yeah.
you can take it in year one.
Oh.
So let's say my taxable income's $100,000 as an example. I buy a piece of property, I get a cost segregation study, and I find out I can actually end up, and let's say realistically for a $100,000 house, it's not going to be 50 grand, but let's just say it's 25,000. If I have a $100,000 income and I just run from $100,000 to 75,
That's huge.
I need to buy more real estate to get to zero. So this is when they talk about Donald Trump not paying taxes and saying he won't show his tax returns.
Yeah.
It's because he does this at a massive scale.
Okay.
They buy, so people who own properties have to keep buying properties so that every single year they don't pay taxes.
Right.
But they're doing it legally because and actually what happened in the most recent administration, Biden's administration, they started to take that down. So it went from you could take 100% in year one, and they started to decrease it to 80, then 60, then 40, and now we're at 40, and now Trump's back in, and they assume that it's going to go back to 100.
Wow.
But this is the way that people who buy real estate do it. Now, the only way that you can do that is actually if you are a licensed, or not a licensed, excuse me, if you are considered a real estate professional, and that's tax code. Right. So what some people do is, let's say, a guy's an engineer, makes great money, he starts investing in real estate. Wife stays at home with the kids. Wife gets a real estate license. She's now technically a real estate professional. Or if you're not married and you're, same situation, guy's an engineer, makes good money, buys real estate. He goes and puts enough time into his real estate investing that he no longer, or that he now, based on IRS code, could be considered a real estate professional, and he can use that. Or doesn't matter if you're a real estate professional, you can do that with short-term rental properties, Airbnbs.
Yeah.
So that's why
you do that with Airbnb?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Do you?
I do. Yeah. So my wife and I have one Airbnb. So we have one Airbnb, 10 long-term rentals, and then I'm in the process of purchasing my first multi-tenant retail commercial property in Crown Point.
Okay, cool. So the first thing I want to know, what was like your first property that you ever got?
So this is one of the places where I love that we can kind of go through the different avenues of types of properties. The first property that I ever bought was my house, and I say that on purpose because that sets you up, man.
A lot of people do start there. First
Everybody gets the first house, but people don't normally go after that.
And that's the thing, man. So I bought, my wife and I, this is step one of real estate investing, is your primary residence. And this is another reason why I love the tax benefits of real estate. So if you buy a house, okay, we bought our first house. It was $160,000 in Winfield. This was in 2018. And we bought a house that was a little under market value that needed some cosmetic work. So we put $10,000 down, bought our house. We put about 15 grand into renovating it. 2 years later, we sold it for 235 grand.
Wow.
Now, the beautiful thing about your primary residence is that when you buy a house and you live in it for 2 years, the IRS says that's your primary residence. You will not have to pay capital gains tax.
Oh.
So since it's been now, if I would have
meaning when you sell it,
correct.
Okay.
So when you so at that point, we were at a point where we had the opportunity to buy another house. So we sold it. We made 20% down for the next house, and we moved it to the next house.
Yeah.
We've been in our current house now for 5 years. So when we sell it, married couples have up to $500,000 tax free when you sell, and single people have up to 250 grand tax free when you sell. That's capital gains. So if you buy a place for 250 and sell it for 500 as a single person, as long as you live there for 2 years,
you're good.
Exactly. And you no longer have capital gains tax. So that's all yours based on IRS. So that was my first property, was our house. And so then we took that, we found out we were pregnant with my daughter Mila, and then we bought our next house, and we rolled 20% into our next house. And so now the house we're in now, we finished the basement, right? Had my father-in-law do that, did it for a great price. We ended up making it look really great. We forced appreciation on the house, making it worth more. And now we're in a situation where we actually have a line of credit on our house, and we use that to invest in different ways too. So you can leverage other forms of real estate that, and I don't recommend doing that unless you know what you're doing, leveraging more to buy more. But you can have equity lines of credit on properties that have more value. So that was my first one.
Okay. So, real quick, going back to like how you described like the Donald Trump buying these more and more properties, that's at 1031?
No, so a 1031 is let's say I have so my wife and I own 5 duplexes. let's say one of my duplexes, we would like to sell because we have an opportunity to buy a 4-unit.
Mm-hmm.
So if I sold that and I sold it and I didn't buy another property,
Yeah.
let's say we made 200 grand, I now have 200 grand into my personal income, taxable income that year. Instead, what you do with that is this is how people who, let's say I wanted to sell that duplex and I found a 4-unit, I could sell the duplex and I've identified another property that I want to buy that is higher in terms of price, but a like type of property.
Yeah.
So it's similar. So I could take that, and this is stuff that I would talk to a 1031 attorney about.
Sure.
But you take that, and you can. I take my 200, and with 200 grand in real estate, I could buy roughly $1 million worth of real estate. So because that 200,000 is going to be roughly 20% down.
20% down payment.
So, but let's just say for being conservative with it, I'm going to buy an $800,000 property. So I'm going to buy an 8-unit now that's worth 800. So I take that duplex, I make my 2, I move it into an 8-unit, bought an $800,000 property with the 200 grand, tax free. And I don't have taxes on that 200 I made because I've deferred it for the future.
I see.
Because one day I'm going to have to sell wherever I go.
So you could do it forever almost.
Forever.
And okay.
Yes, and that's talk to an accountant and attorney on that. But yes, absolutely. In theory, you can do that forever. The cost segregation process is something that's totally different. That if you do it the right way, that's how you can see. Like, it's actually more beneficial for somebody to keep buying real estate than it is to just sit on it and hang on it. And that's why people grow so big, because it's like, well, I'll give you an example. I've got a friend, a guy who built a fantastic house flipping business, flips about 150, 200 houses a year. He was making such good income, but he had such a huge tax bill every year, millions of dollars in taxes. And he learned about the strategy, and so he kept his real estate business growing and selling houses and flipping houses. But he learned about the cost segregation and what's referred to as bonus depreciation, where he's like, well, instead of paying my $1 million, $2 million, $4 million tax bill every year, how much real estate do I need to buy so that I don't have that tax bill?
Yeah.
And within 3 years, he had almost 2,000 rental units. Because he's like, rather than paying all these taxes, I need to put this into more real estate.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. That's one of the ways that you see.
So you were saying like how you said the last administration was changing the law.
Yes.
So explain that again. So there's a certain percentage
that
you have to buy more real estate with?
Good question. So basically what that says, that cost segregation study, let's just say, for example, I have $50,000 worth of bonus depreciation, of depreciation in value.
That means just the first year you can write that
in
off?
In year one, and then there's still a portion of it you get to take over the 27 and a half years.
Oh.
Yeah, so not all of it are you taking it in year one. There's only a portion you can take in year one. But the rest, everything with the land, the concrete, the structure, you can still take over 27 and a half years. But to go, and that's stuff where I could send you guys some stuff on, like, just understanding kind of how that works.
But because is there a huge benefit to getting that bonus the first year?
Yes.
There is?
The huge benefit is if my taxable income's 100 and I buy enough real estate, I can get that to 0 and not pay taxes this year. So rather than paying the taxes, I'll just buy real estate. And the benefit to the government is they're getting taxes by you owning the real estate. The government
get taxed anyway.
Right by owning the property, you're paying property taxes.
Yeah.
You're bringing in depending on where you're living, you're contributing to the area, right? And so whether you're bringing people in for housing and they need those jobs, so they're paying income taxes in that area. They're paying local taxes in that area. So the benefit is by you being the real estate owner and by providing real estate, ultimately it's a net positive for the government by giving you the benefit as the real estate owner, and more taxes will be paid by having the property. But with what your question was going back. So what the administration was, let's just say for easy numbers, you had roughly a $50,000. Like I just finished a cost segregation study on 4 units. It was roughly $77,000. Okay, so that was the benefit that I'm getting towards my taxable income. Okay, so. But what they would do is that 77,000, you could take. Let's just say that was year one. The Biden administration was taking it away 20% each year until it went to 0.
Yeah.
So this last year was 40%. So I would only get 40% of that 77,000 towards a credit towards my taxable income. So this is all stuff, and like we went pretty deep fast. And I think for the person who's watching, like the one thing I would want to say is that with real estate, and we can go to like the beginning starting process of buying a house and where that kind of snowballs up to and how we got to, and how investors can get there. But this is stuff where the point I'm trying to make here is there are great tax benefits to owning real estate. And that's one of when you hear people talk about it, if you spend 3, 4, 5 hours like studying this stuff, you'd be like, okay, That makes sense. If I buy a house and I sell it because I've lived there for the last 2 years, I don't have to pay taxes. There's one. If I buy a rental property, I get to depreciate things in that property towards lowering my tax bill. And if I become, in the eyes of the IRS, a real estate professional, which there's minimum how much time you spend on working on things or what you do for your living and stuff like that, I can actually do things that are even greater towards tax benefits, like a cost segregation study, bonus depreciation, and finding ways to keep buying more real estate. So that's where that's one of my favorite things. And I mean, that's probably one of the best for people specifically who become high income earners, because at that point you're like, I'm making this much money, I'm going to spend this much in taxes. I've got to find a way to invest this money somewhere where I'm not going to have to end up paying this much in taxes.
Yeah.
And you can do it by buying real estate if you qualify. And these are, talk to accountants and attorneys on this stuff. But
Okay.
But real quick though,
Yeah.
you did when you first left IUB, you
Yep.
talked about like a mentorship.
Yeah.
yeah.
How was that relationship starting when you just left college?
Yeah, man. So I had a girl I went to high school with that was a friend of mine, and I remember going to her house in high school, and I remember thinking like, dude, this house is sick. And then I asked her, I was like, what'd your dad do? And she's like, he's a real estate agent. I was like, nice, okay. So then I started talking to him, and he ended up being a phenomenal guy, man. So when I was at kind of like we were talking about, when I was at in Bloomington, actually it really started my senior year. So quick backstep, my whole life was sports. So basketball and baseball was all I ever cared about. And so I have a naturally kind of obsessive personality. Nobody ever had to motivate me to do anything. You know?
Yeah, I'm the same way.
I was born that way, and I'm very thankful for that blessing, because it's also a curse sometimes,
Right.
but it has been a blessing. And so I took that, and sports, I realized my main sport was basketball, but 5'9" 3/4, I was like, this ain't working. Spike was the only one to do it from Crown Point, so I'm like, see, anyway. And then baseball, I had some opportunities with baseball, but I'm like, this ain't it. So I met Steve. And I was like, I'm learning all these things on YouTube University, as I call it, and reading books and just listening to all this content and learning about. And I started asking myself the question, like, what do I want out of my life? That was the question I asked, because I don't think a lot of people do. Like when I was at IU, the question that everyone, and before IU, in high school, what are you going to be? Like, what are you going to do for work? That was the question, not what do you want?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm a lot more philosophical than I am kind of practical. So you can take me down from the clouds sometimes, because I like to look up. But I was like, man, what do I've never, no one's ever asked me that.
What do you want your life to look like?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No one ever asked me that.
Yeah.
And so I started listening to all these different people. I got to the point where most of the people I was listening to, when it came to the idea of like what an ideal life looked like, they were real estate investors, or they were in real estate in some way. Those were the people I tended to attract to more, you know? And so I got the stock stuff for some reason. It just didn't stick with me. I don't know why, but real estate guys and girls I connected with. And so I started reading all these books, and I remember thinking, I'm like, oh, her dad, I could ask him. And I remember talking to my mom, and she's like, yeah, you should talk to Steve. Steve Likas, by the way. He's still in Winfield, Lakes Four Seasons, Indiana. Great guy, Lakes Four Seasons, the king of Lakes Four Seasons. He's awesome, man. And so I met Steve, and I remember hearing he's like, finding out kind of what his career looked like, and asking questions and what kind of income that looked like. And I was like, okay, this is like, I became obsessed with it. And so I started learning from Steve, and I went everywhere that Steve went. I barely let him take a piss, because like, I just let him everywhere he went. I'm like, where's Steve going? I'm following. And at this point,
You were like his shadow.
100%. I was like, whatever Steve's gonna do, I'm gonna learn, because if he's got that, I want that. And so I ended up following him around. By the time I was 19, I got my license. I stayed with Steve for about 4 years, and then when I was 23, I started my own real estate team. Because at that point, I had gotten to the point where I would have never left Steve if I just didn't take the move. When I first met Steve, I told him, I said, hey Steve, I know that one day I want to do what you do and have a team. I want to grow a sales team. And so he knew it from the beginning, but when it was time, it was just like time to make the jump. And so I learned a lot from Steve on just his experience. And I think, one of my I could say mentor. If I say mentor, I may have never met this person, but Jim Rohn, who's basically like the godfather of
Yeah.
Yes.
I know who that is.
Tony Robbins' mentor, Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn says, a lot of people say that experience is the best teacher, but really it's other people's experience.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to walk across the street on 41 and get hit by a car to find out it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
You just watch
Someone
somebody
else's.
do it, yeah.
I don't need to figure that out the hard way.
Yes.
So I learned from other people's experiences. And now the main thing for me was I wanted to invest in real estate, though. And I didn't have any money. and my parents didn't have any money. I wasn't going to get it from them. And I grew up, just for context, like I grew up in Crown Point, but it was like middle class life. And actually, when I was young, my mom and dad had a rough kind of financial time. I didn't know that because everything seemed fine, but they went through some financial struggles, divorce, and it was tough. And so I remember hearing at 18 years old, and one of the things I was listening to, that 70% of divorces happen because of money. And I always knew I wanted to be a dad. I always knew I wanted to be a husband.
I'm shocked it's not higher.
Right, exactly. And at that point, I was like, I'm never going to have money be the reason.
I know,
I'm never going to have money, because what my parents went through, money will never be the reason.
Yep.
And so that's when I got into it, met Steve, learned from him, and but I didn't have any money to invest in real estate. So Steve, and I'll sum this up as fast as I can, but in the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and listening to Robert Kiyosaki and a number of other different books I was reading, I had heard that the best skill to have is sales. And so to learn sales, I had to go into a sales role.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I want to learn about real estate. I need money to invest in real estate, and I need to learn sales. So I'll sell real estate. Yep. I'll learn selling. I'll learn real estate, and eventually
I thought the exact same way. That's how I used to think too.
Yes. Yeah. So and that's what I did. So I started selling, and got to the point where by the time I was 21, I was one of the top 30 realtors in Northwest Indiana.
That's crazy.
So my first year and a half, I did about 18 deals in a year and a half.
Wow.
And then my second full year, I sold 48 properties.
Wow.
At 21 years old. And
That's
at that
crazy.
point, since we've grown then, and now our team is one of the top 3 in Northwest Indiana.
Wow.
I just turned 30. We have 11 realtors on our team.
And what's the company called?
The Nickla Group is our team. So this is our commercial logo. So we have this is separate from our.
I was looking at that sweatshirt, but I was gonna say nothing until you brought it up. I was thinking like, look, it kind of like You know, it's funny you said baseball because it does kind of look like a glove a little bit.
You know, man. You know what's funny is this symbol is the international symbol of gratitude.
Oh,
so
is it?
we put that as one of our 5 core values because, and we'll get into real estate again, I promise. But I'll do one more thing here.
Yeah.
This was when I left Steve to start my own team. The reason I did it, it's funny, man. And this is, if there's any message that I feel like I could give to people here, this is probably the best thing that I can give to people. I'm not going to be the wealthiest guy you guys talk to. I'm not going to be the most successful. But I do think that I arguably have one of the best lives of anybody you guys will talk to as far as business owners. Like my health, my family, which I'm very grateful for, my family, my faith life, my kids, my friendships, my spiritual life. Like I try to keep it as well-rounded as possible.
Yeah.
But at 23, I remember 22. So I was 22. And that year I had made over $250,000.
Wow.
I was 22. And I only say this just for context, okay? I don't say it. I don't want anyone to think that it's cool. It's not that cool. It's just, and I try to say it as humbly as possible. I say it because I thought that was what was going to make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the year I was the most anxious. I never felt what it was like to feel anxious and stressed. And I'm stressed and anxious, but I'm where I wanted to be with goals, and I'm hitting all these things. And I'm like, what the hell is going on, man? Like, why am I feeling this way?
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember growing up in sports, one of my things I loved the most was the leadership side. I always played team sports, and I usually gravitated toward being one of the leaders. And so same thing kind of in my friend group. I was usually the one who was like telling Kyle not to do stupid shit. Excuse my language. But like I was telling my buddies, like, don't do anything dumb. And I was kind of like in that role, and I was missing that. I was missing the ability to impact. I had the competition in sports or in business. I had the growth. I loved competing, and I loved feeling like I was growing, but I was missing the impact. And so I was like, I'm ready to start a team because I want to impact the people on our team. And that's what I went and did. Was I was missing that thing for me where I felt like I was impacting others. And so now I have the ability to do that with our team members, help them build their businesses, help them, create for their lives, their family, their kids.
And how many people is that?
There's 15 of us total
15.
now. 15 of us, yeah. And so our goal, we're one of the top 3 teams in Northwest Indiana in terms of dollars amounts sold. And our competition is honestly, it's people my parents' age. You know what I mean? It's people that our parents' age. And so we're definitely the young team in that.
Yeah.
And most of our team, the average age is in the early 30s, so we're a young team real estate wise. And now I'm kind of going into that growth stage of investing in real estate, which we can get back into. But that's I say that only for context. Like there's so much more than just making money.
Well,
man.
because whatever you said, 200 something at that age, that's insane.
And that was pre-2020. Like that was pre-inflation.
Before all this money got
Correct.
pushed. Yeah.
That was like
that might be like 400,000.
no, seriously, that'd be like making $400,000 now.
That's insane.
Yeah, and so I'm 22, and I'm like it was
That's like unheard of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so but again, that for me was, there was things I thought that was what it was going to do it for me.
Yeah.
And there's so much more about learning what it means to have a fulfilled life. You know,
Yeah.
and so the thing I was missing was, I was missing the feeling of like the idea of just being grateful for what I did have.
Mm-hmm.
My mind was constantly onto the next thing, trying to grow, and I was never grateful for what I had. And so
you were moving a little bit too fast.
Right.
Really
and Tony Robbins says the key to the key to success is gratitude. And so for me, and realizing this, I was like, man, I'm passing by all these things that I should be grateful for. And so we made that like within our logo, and like, so it's one of our 5 core values is being grateful.
So you would say a lot of the fulfillment came from after you started building your team.
Definitely a part of it, for sure. That was one aspect. And then also just realizing, man, like that I think the idea, you know, the quote that comparison's the thief of all joy. It's true. I found myself comparing to other people. I'm like, man, that person's doing this person's doing that. And it's such a dangerous place to get to.
Yeah.
And the truth is, man, like I could have a totally different business because I do think I have a lot of capability, but at the same time, man, like the things I'm not willing to sacrifice, like, are the relationships with my wife and my kids. Like, I'd never do like this time. It's almost 7 o'clock. I'd never do dinner, bath, bedtime.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a dad and a husband, one all the time. So those things.
To the family, we said sorry and we sent.
Hey man,
I know, right?
Hey man. So I never do, you know, late stuff, even appointments at this point. Like, it's very rare. So I started to realize the things that meant the most to me, and if I don't have as big of a business or invest as much, I'm okay with that. And there are some people who, like, their whole thing, they're okay with maybe missing dinners and bedtimes and stuff because they have goals. I've got goals, but I also understand that my goals may be different. And at the same time, I can do both. I can be a great husband and father and build a business and be an investor and do all of it.
I mean, it's not like this is the first time you hear someone say, you know, people that just focus their whole life on making, and believe me, I mean, this is coming from someone who I focus on money a lot, but you hear about, you know, super rich people, all they do is focus on money and they're still miserable.
Yeah.
Or right, their family's a mess, or their health is a mess, or there's other stuff. So, yeah, I mean,
man.
Money's not the only thing.
I would put, and I mean it, like when I say it, I would put my life up against almost anybody's. Like, there's very few, if anybody. Like, my life is awesome.
Yeah.
And when I walk through my door, my kids run and scream to jump in my arms. Like, I love hanging out with my wife. Like, I love exercising. I still play basketball. I still do these things I enjoy to do.
Yeah.
I still find time for the things I love. I still find times to struggle and get through hard shit and do things that I don't. I never asked you if I can cuss on this, but I apologize.
No, I don't.
It's all good.
I think you're good. You're fine.
I was going to put it on the radio, but I might have to blur some stuff out.
Well, my bad. I'll stop from now. But
no, you all good. People going to be driving me like a weird beep. Like, what's going on?
But you know, in well-roundedness, and I get out in and out of sync, you know. And the whole point of all this, like, this is why I invest in real estate, is because it creates the mental clarity for me to be where my feet are at. You know, I find that, like, in my business, just as an agent, it's constantly you're chasing the next deal.
Right.
And so through real estate investing, I've found ways to create wealth and create cash flow to the point, and it's not anything crazy right now, but it will get to the point where it's like, money is not the concern. I know my family's going to be taken care of, so I don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? And that was like what my goal was. Freedom of finances gave me the freedom for time and the freedom for choice. That was were my ultimate reasons for investing in real estate and doing what I do.
Okay, but can we get your opinion on the value of financial freedom, on how it impacts those other areas of your life, though?
Yes.
Because do you feel like it does make the rest of your life easier, or is it, you know, just so those things totally separate?
I think that the best way it's a good question. I think it depends on the person. My wife, when I met my wife at 19 years old, which I was not trying to find my wife at 19 years old, but that was God's plan. And I met her and I was like, oh man.
Good thing you did. Look at us.
Amen. Yeah.
It's hard out here now.
Amen. But when I met her, I remember asking her, because at that time, 19, my mind's thinking about business and everything. I remember meeting her, and she wanted to be basically a children's mental health, so work with kids who are in rough situations.
Like a social worker,
yeah.
like that.
And I remember asking her, I was like, how much money does that make? Because that's where my mind was, right? At that age, you're like, so how much money does that make? And she goes, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so someone like her, the financial freedom, I don't think would affect her whether she was wealthy or not, because I think she's very rare.
Focus on other things.
Correct.
Yeah.
But for me, I think that, and especially I think maybe naturally more for men feeling like providers, naturally it's going to be harder for us unless if that financial freedom is there, you can have that ability to be more present and to be better for the people around you. Yeah. You know, and that's kind of one of the things the last 2 years for me was I started losing motivation for my goals because I had been successful for a long time, and my friends, or in my and the goals that I was setting for myself didn't excite me because I knew that my family was going to be taken care of. Yeah. So I recently had kind of adopted the idea that it's not about me anymore. So the answer to your question is getting yourself. Best way I can explain it is when you go on an airplane and they say, in the event of an emergency, put your oxygen mask on first. Right. Then help other people. The reason for that is because you cannot psychologically help others people unless you help yourself first, unless you're taken care of. Yeah. And so there is selfishness to it. I got to take care of my finances. I need to take care of my health. I need to take care of my spirituality, my faith, my mindset, so that I can then take care of others. So the beginning of my day is selfish. Like I work out, I do my thing. I go play ball, whatever it is. And then the rest of the day, I feel like I can give to other people. Yeah. You know what I mean? So the answer to your question is put your oxygen mask on first. Get your financial house in order. And then you can
can work towards further things.
Correct. Yeah. So I absolutely agree that, having financial freedom or at least financial independence, knowing that you're good, is a place that, because let's be honest, man, if you're worried about paying a bill or paying for food or things, you are operating out of pure fight or flight. Like you need it's survival mode. Yeah. So you're not the best version that you can be. But
it's getting in the way of everything else.
Correct. Yeah. If you know you're good, you can slowly start to flourish and become the best version of yourself. Yep. That's why your finances are so important. We live in a world where you either you can go down that rabbit hole talking about money and you can either become a hippie and live somewhere in the mountains, or you figure out your finances in the world that we live in and take care of yourself and the people around you.
Okay. Would you say that as you make more money, you feel like you have less time?
Generally, yes. And it all depends on how you make your money. So like for me, I'm in sales and I run a business. So that's why I'm very happy with the size of our business being a small business, because if I wanted to grow it to be bigger, the only people right now who would lose from that would be my family. And for me, at this age of my family, I'm not willing to do that. Right. But as my kids get older and things become a little bit different, that is definitely a goal of ours, is to build our real estate sales business, because I want to have more of an impact on people. Yeah. The real estate investing with our money is creating more of that time and ability and freedom for us to do what we need to do and create that time. So that makes sense. Okay,
great stuff.
And you guys are located in Indiana, right?
Yeah, so we have a couple agents in Illinois. So, okay. Yeah, so we a couple licensed in Illinois. So, but yeah, mostly our office, we work out of Crown Point, and then but we have agents who are from all over Northwest Indiana and a couple in Illinois.
Okay, and how was that process when you got your license? Was it like a written test?
Yeah, yeah, good question. You can do it in person or online, and then it's a barrier to entry, man. I remember one thing from my class, and it was there's 43,560 square feet in an acre. That's it. Everything else I don't remember. So like you go through, once you get through it, you take a test, and then you got your license. And we could go down that rabbit hole.
You got to keep retaking it too? Or?
No, you have to do CE, which is basically continuing education. It's like super simple and easy.
I got you.
Once a year. Yeah, it's easy.
Okay, my question would be, you might have touched on this real quickly, but let's talk more about what is your advice for younger people who want to get into the space. What's the first thing they should do? What's the easy way to do it?
Number one is you need to have a reason for doing this. Yeah. I think that some people call it their why, but you have to have a reason that is deep enough for you to never quit on that reason. If your desire is great enough, you will find a way to succeed in whatever it is. So number one is, what is your reason for achieving? And that is a mindset thing. Absolutely mindset. Because your mindset has to be in a place. I could teach you every single thing. Well, not everything, but I could teach you a lot about real estate investing. And you can learn everything there is about investing, stocks, whatever, about finances. But if there's not a deep enough desire or reason for it, you will give up on it. And I can promise you that. And so that's number one, is what is the reason for doing it? And it has to be deep enough to where it keeps you going when you do not want to be doing it. So that's one.
Would you say that reason has to be, I want this to be my main career, or could it be, I want this to be just something I do on take second priority to my
Yeah.
top thing.
Oh, it definitely could. Yeah. If you're gonna go like practical when it comes to like investing, yeah, absolutely, it could be a secondary thing to your W-2, your career, or your business. Like it could be separate to that. I just think like the way that I think about it always is the reason that I'm buying these properties is because one day I would like for them to be paid for or cash flowing enough to where if I don't want to go to work, I don't have to.
Yeah.
If or my daughter gets sick, God forbid, or my wife needs my wife has something crazy happen, or
you can
God
take some
forbid,
time off.
I can do whatever the hell I want. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and that's one of the main reasons for me. It's like, all right, that's why this is so important to me. You know, so the answer number one is like, could it, the answer for me is why, and having a reason deep enough to where it's like, what is your desire for it? But to answer your question, yeah, it could be secondary, especially investing. Like a lot of it, you could, specifically with stocks. And I think maybe if you're going to ask about pro and con, that's probably a pro to stocks is you can invest in stocks. And with real estate, it's usually a little bit more consuming. Like it's going to be more consuming with time and the knowledge base of it. Like when it comes to, because you've got to go through a lot of education on the real estate side, and then it's hard not to be obsessed with it once you know all that. It's hard not to be like, you know, all into it. And then there's other ways of investing in real estate where you don't have to go that way. And we could talk about that too as far as other ways. But I'd say step one is a reason and a why, and step two is educating yourself, man. Like,
okay,
yeah.
Let's say you're 18 years old today. Is there a certain amount of money you think somebody should have before they start investing into a house or whatever?
Good question. The truth is that, you know, if you got 10 grand at 18, which is a lot of money at 18, you probably are not in a situation to invest in real estate yet.
Okay.
It's more so going to be the first thing you're going to need to do is continue to educate yourself about real estate. There's so many books and podcasts and places that you can learn and educate while you build your income. That would be what I would continue to focus on is your primary active income can get to a point where you can then have so much saved up that you can start to invest because you built your primary income and you're educating yourself and the time is to go. Now,
because you had like around like 25, you said put 10 down, like 15 or so for like renovations for your first.
Yeah. So and that was the house that I lived in. So if you're investing in real estate, let's say you go to buy a real estate investment, financing on a real estate investment is different than financing on your house. Your house, you can put as little as 3% down, 3.5%. With an investment, you're gonna have to put 20. So minimum. So that's where educating yourself is super important on how.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. So you're saying if you're young, if you're moving out, then it's a different story.
Yes.
Right?
So at that case, let's say you got 10 grand. Yeah. If I was you, step one would be educate, and step two would be I would do what's referred to as house hacking. I would buy a property that has, let's say it's a duplex or a triplex, and you can buy it with 3.5%, 5% down. So you can buy it with a lot less down. Let's say, for example, in Hammond, there's quite a bit of duplexes, triplexes, things like that. And let's say you find a duplex for 200 grand. Right, and so at 200,000, if you are going to live there, you only need 3.5% down to live there. Yeah. So 3.5% of that, sorry about that, is going to be seven grand. So you can buy a property for $7,000, live in one unit, and then rent out the extra unit or other units. And then what happens? Here's what happens. Let's say you live there for 2 years. Now, if you wanted to sell that, you could have a lot of money, or you go from having 2 units, and you're living in one, and you go do that again, or go buy a house, and now you have 3 rental properties that you bought for 3.5% down and not 20% down.
Yeah.
Because it was your primary residence, you lived there. So at 18, step one would be educate and save and learn how to make more money, right? Yeah. And step two would be buy something where you can live in one unit and rent out the other units, or at least rent out the bedrooms. You know, if you got buddies who want to move out too, have your friends move into a bedroom, $400 a month, right? Yeah. And rent out the rooms. But that would be step one. And you're getting into a property without having to put 20% down, and you're mitigating your largest expense on a monthly basis, which is your housing. Yeah. If your housing expense goes from $2,000 a month or $1,500 a month, and now you have people paying out the other units, or hopefully, actually, they pay more than what you owe, and now you're making money where you live, right? The number one expense people have in life is their housing. So if you could mitigate that and lower it, that's step one. And now you just bought multiple units with only 3.5% down, and you have multiple investment properties. You can go to the next one and set yourself up for either buying another house or a nice home or another multi-unit, depending on your situation in life. But I know people who house hack their way. That's referred to as house hacking. House hack your way to 10, 20, 30 units until one day they're like, hey, I've got 30 rental properties. 30 years old now, and
So that means you keep moving to the next property and you keep renting out the previous one.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So you buy a duplex, live in one, rent the other, live there for. There's a minimum requirement of time. It's usually depending on the time. Let's say an FHA loan usually requires you to live there for like a year if it's your primary residence. Let's say you live there for a year. Now you go to the next one, buy another one. Now you got 4 units. 3 of them are rented, 1 you're living in.
It's just like
Give it to the
Monopoly.
next one.
I should pay more attention to Monopoly. I'm more of like a Uno kid.
Yes.
And the Boppy kid. I should have been paying them.
Okay, so now that's if you're moving out. Let's say you're not moving out. You just want to invest. What's your savings? What should your savings look like, and what should your income look like?
Good question.
Just some examples.
Good question. I think that from an expense perspective, like how your life looks, it's very personal based. What I would say is having a percentage of your income that comes in that you focus on towards investing. So I'll give you a super simple breakdown. When my wife and I had debt, okay, we would live off of X percent of our income. So let's say for easy numbers, 50% of our money went towards living expenses, okay? And let's say 30% went towards paying off debt and 20% went towards savings, investing, okay? Now, before you do that, I would recommend, so some of that debt includes like, if you got student loans, car loans, stuff like that, pay that stuff off. Get your money coming in every month to be your money, right? But live off of less than you can. Live below your means and have a percentage that no matter what, every month goes into an account. We call it our freedom fund. Still to this day, from when we were 19, still to this day, it's called our freedom fund. It's a separate account. I open up a separate account, and I have a percentage of our income that goes in there. And once we have enough in there to buy a property, I go and buy a property. But once we paid off the debts that we had, then at that point, we were like, we have so much more now to put into our freedom fund. So what we do is we try to live off less. We actually, that example is one example. A really good book called The Richest Man in Babylon.
I read that.
Perfect. Richest Man in Babylon is like 70, 20, 10 principle. Okay. Live off 70, use 20 to pay off debt. 10, pay yourself first.
Yeah.
Right? Pay yourself first. That pay yourself first, even when you have debt or you have people to pay back, you're still taking 10%. Yeah. And another simple way of looking at it is take your living expenses. Let's say it's $3,000 a month. Get to the point where you have 3 months or 6 months, whatever you feel comfortable, 12 months, whatever your risk tolerance is. Some people may go where, all right, I live off $3,000 a month. If I have 6 months in there, if I don't make $1, I can live for 6 more months. That's a play. So that's what my wife and I do. We have a number that, based on our living expenses, we keep a minimum in what we call an emergency fund. That's a separate account. And that's there. And in worst case scenario, I have X amount of months or years that I'm comfortable with. So that's there. Then we have our freedom fund. Everything over that is just dumping into there for when it's time to buy a property. And then we have a percentage of money that we give to our financial advisor, a percentage of money, right? And a percentage of money that we give in tithe and things like that.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Is that good?
What that reminded me of, now the next thing I want to bring up, I added, is good debt. You hear a lot of people talk about good debt. So let's talk about significance of that.
Yes.
And what does that look like?
Yeah, so I would define good debt as, simply put, much better put through the book called Rich Dad Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki, but debt that someone else is paying for, right? So as far as for example, our rental properties, we've technically not against my name because we have them in corporations and companies and so on, and that's all entity related stuff. But we have millions of dollars worth of debt, right? Technically. But those debts are being paid off by our tenants, right? And so that's one of the ways where those properties are appreciating in value, and every month they're being paid for by somebody else. My house, I do use it as an investment because we're able to leverage against it. We're able, and one day, and it's our first house I talked about before would be, that first one got us to the next one,
right?
And is getting us to the next one. So, but it is taking money out of my pocket every month. I'm paying down that mortgage. Now, it's increasing, the value's increasing, and I'm paying down the debt. So I would argue I'm more of your house is medium debt. It's not awful debt as long as it's, appreciating in value. But
I mean, like, the thing is, you need somewhere to live, though.
Yeah.
You need someone to live. So.
Exactly. And that's why the house hacking thing, like, if you don't own a home yet and you're in a situation where you can, I would, in all your power, I would do the house hacking step one. Step one. Like, my wife and I, we were 27. We had our first child. And we were like, should we house hack? Like, you want to do this? And we have a beautiful home. We live in an awesome neighborhood. Like our house, I love our house. And we were kind of like, should we just do it for fun? Like, screw it. Let's just go, buy a 4-unit and do this or whatever. And so we even thought about doing that, even with a kid and another one coming at the time.
Yeah.
But I do recommend doing it if you're in a situation where you don't have kids or you're not in a serious relationship where that person is like, I'm not willing to do that. I would maybe try to find a relationship where that person is willing to do that because they're serious about your finances too. Like even my wife, in the situation we're at, living the way that we do now, it was like, hey, should we do this? Like, so I would recommend do anything possible to find a way to house hack and live in one unit and rent out the others. But good debt is debt that is being paid for by somebody else. And the beautiful thing about real estate is you can buy a $1 million property with $250,000. You know, you can use $250,000 could buy you millions worth of real estate, and you can grow that. And so as long as it's being paid for by other people, but it's done in a way too where it is. You have to know what you're doing. That's why the education part is so important. I wouldn't recommend people get that if they don't know what they're doing because that debt can wipe you out.
Right.
If you don't know what you're doing and you go and buy a real estate deal, that debt can take you out.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, that's why the education piece is so important. And so yeah,
I think that's why it probably seems like a scarier thing to do versus. I mean, even like when people ask me about stock market investing, I always pretty much tell them like. There is no minimum. Like you could literally, like especially now with like apps like Robinhood and stuff, you can start with $1.
Yes.
It doesn't seem as intimidating as buying your own house or something, right?
For sure.
So that's how I look at it. Okay, next thing on our list. What is your favorite thing about what you do, or just real estate investing?
Yeah, good question, man. I really do enjoy buying a piece of property that needs work and seeing what it looks like after, but ultimately, like my favorite part about real estate investing, man, is the long-term appreciation and cash flow that comes with it. Like ultimately my goal is, having, with these rental properties is that it pays for our life forever. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful place to be because, some people, they may get it from their employer. Some people, they may get it through, through what's the term? Like if you're the railroad pension, things like that. For me, this is the cash flow and the long-term appreciation is what I love about it. Because long-term, man, it's so nice knowing like, okay, yes, it's not liquid. It's not like the money's, in an account, right, with Fidelity or whatever it is, or Vanguard. But because I know what I'm doing and I've educated myself so much, the worst case scenario is I get a lot of that money in the next 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, 90 days at the most, right? So, but also, I can get lines of credit on it if I really needed something. But the long-term appreciation, I'm a lot more risk adverse than I am I know I have friends I got a buddy who's my age, 31. He has just under 1,000 rental property units himself.
My God.
Himself. He's the third largest. If you guys want to check it out, I interviewed him on my podcast.
Okay.
It was awesome. Ferris, one of my very good friends.
Tim Ferriss?
No, not Tim. Ferris Gassi. I'll send you guys information.
Okay.
My wife and I have the privilege of being on his nonprofit board too. But Ferris, he's got 1,000 units, just under 1,000. He's the third largest privately owned real estate owner in the country under the age of 40, and he lives right here. Great dude. But anyway, he's someone who's very like, not just go. And I'm like, hold up, pump the brakes here. And so what I love about real estate is the ability to buy more assets that are worth a lot more, to force the appreciation to make them more, and to cash flow on them on a monthly basis, and being able to increase that cash flow over time. One of the coolest things about rentals too, man, it's a long-term game. Like my rental properties, I've been buying rental properties 5 years now. They're not making a ton of money. Like I've spent this week over $30,000 on renovating one unit and then a house that I'm flipping. You spend money on these places.
Right.
But long term, when you have, let's say you just buy one house a year, as an example, for 10 years, and you got 10 properties, and you just sit on those 10. 20 years from now, if you focus on paying them down as the rents come in, and you have 10 properties paid for, right? And the average rent, 20 years from now, it's probably going to be, let's just say it's $2,000. That's $20,000 a month in income. You'll have expenses, and let's just say you walk away with $15,000 a month, right? Yeah. That's a beautiful place to be, even if that's like $5,000 a month. If you don't have a house payment at some point, right, or you have a very minimal one, and you decide to get out of your work because your rental income can cover those things, that's a beautiful place to be. So for me, it's the long-term appreciation and it is the cash flow, man. It's a beautiful thing. But awesome. I do love watching like the properties that we buy. Everyone we've bought, we've renovated. I love seeing what it looked like and what it looks like now, what it looked like before, and going into making them better. Yeah. Like every single one we've renovated. And
so is that why you love those project homes?
Yeah, man.
Let me ask you a question. Do your mom ever watch those HGTV?
Oh, I was about to say House Hunters. I was just about to say House Hunters. My mom watches that all the time.
Yes. Yeah, man. Yeah, no, we definitely watch.
So that's my grandma's favorite. Those. Is that and the ID channel when they talk about the people getting killed and all of that.
Oh, nice.
Those two are top two right there.
Yeah, my wife.
Okay.
Stuff too, man.
Next thing I just thought of.
Yes.
You hear a lot of people talk about the problem with the tenant, right? And finding the right tenant, trusting them, etc.
Yes.
What would you say to them?
Great question.
We won't get to the juicy details.
Yeah,
Did the tenant ever run off on you?
Oh man, just the other day, Kyle and I walked into one that I just took over because we were doing like, all right, let's see what this looks like. And she was a tenant that we inherited, because I bought the property and she was there, right? Mm-hmm. And so usually what's nice about that, though, man, is if you buy properties where there's problem tenants, typically you're going to get the better deal because that person is like, I'm done. I would need out or whatever. And so they're not willing to deal with it. Now, when it comes to tenants, we can go through some stories. I don't have a ton of crazy ones, to be honest with you, but because we only have 10 rental properties right now, so it's nothing crazy.
Yeah.
But 11 with our Airbnb. But the rental property process, if you learn the business of rental properties, you will have less issues. And so I'll give you a story. My dad, when my mom and dad divorced when I was 8, my dad he ended up finding my stepmom. They got married. They moved into her house. And he's like, I'm going to rent out my house. And so this is the story everybody hears, right? All right, I'm going to rent my house out. Rents it out. Starts out fine. But the first person who called, he's like, yeah, you want to rent it out? Yes. Okay. Moves them in.
Oh, yeah.
Now, my dad's a nice guy. Okay. And so when they came in, they started, hey, we're 3-4 days late. It's okay. They pay. Okay. 4 or 5 days late. As time goes on, they start normally being 2-3 weeks, sometimes a month late. And my dad, hey, there's always a story. Well, my husband's got this, and she's sick, and then we had this happen with our kid.
Right. They get to run around. Mm-hmm.
Correct. My dad did not treat it like a business. And so if you're going to run and own rental properties, you have to treat it like a business. And so what does that look like? You need to learn the business of rental property investing. You have money invested into this stuff. What ended up happening with my dad was he let them live there for 7, 8, 9 years. Can't remember how long it was. Property was destroyed. They had animals. They did the whole deal. This is in Lakes of Four Seasons. Great neighborhood, great area, great property. That property should have been worth at the time when they were ready to sell it probably about $325,000. He ended up selling it to somebody for $150 just to get out of it because he was just like, I'm done.
Wow.
And so that's the story that you hear about rentals, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody, but the problem with that is he didn't treat it like a business.
Yeah.
Let me give you a business example of this. I had a tenant that not long ago, we have a 5-day grace period of rent, and if it's not paid on the 5th, this is a standard practice for property management companies and good landlords who take care of their properties. Hey, give you a grace period. 6th day, there's a late payment. After that, there's a per day late fee, right? Now, if you don't enforce that, they will know that they can do that. Mm-hmm. If you stay at a nice apartment complex and you don't pay your rent, you're gone.
Yeah.
You're out. And so the problem with those tenants is they did not believe that my dad would ever do anything about it. Right. And so at the end of the day, when people can take advantage of it, it becomes the last thing on their list to pay for.
Yeah.
So I had a tenant doing that, gave them an update, and let them know. Said, hey, your 5 day. We have an automated system who does that, but they got a notification. 5th day tomorrow, you have a late payment, whatever. And they ended up messaging me saying, hey, well, there's this problem here and blah, blah. They were trying to find excuses. There's mold here. They all use the same excuses. So, hey, there's mold in the property, whatever. Great. That's fine. Did you file a maintenance request? No, they never did. So they didn't tell us that there was any issues. Hey, we'll send someone over. No problem. If there's any issues, we always will take care of our properties. Yeah. So we sent someone over, but she still hadn't paid. The 6th day, she got a late fee, and she got a 10-day notice to vacate. Because in the state of Indiana, if you don't pay, you have 10 days. You either pay or vacate. Mm-hmm. And so when they get it posted on them from an attorney that says, hey, so that's an example of running the business. Is that harsh? At the end of the day, the mortgage company doesn't care if you don't pay your mortgage. They don't have it. They don't care. Yeah, and if you don't pay that mortgage, they're taking that property back.
Yeah.
So this is a business transaction. Right. This isn't about it's not about the emotional side of things.
Right.
It's you have an agreement to pay on this date, and if you don't, these are the consequences.
Yeah.
It's just like, dude, it's just like with having kids. Same thing. My wife and I. One of the hardest things to do with your kids. You guys want to take anything from me? Take this. All right. when you have kids one day, if you say you're going to do something, do it.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you don't, they know that they can get away with whatever it is you say. Hey, if that doesn't happen, you're not going to have that cookie. And then they do it again, they get the damn cookie.
Right.
The hardest thing is to actually follow through.
Yeah.
But, so example, my dad didn't run it like a business. That's where you hear the toilets, termites with tenants, right? It's like, what a running toilet. I don't get the call if the toilet's running. They contact the plumber that we give them emergency contacts for. You have to treat it like a business. And if you do it now, that doesn't mean that comes from the screening process too. It comes from the way we market our properties. If your property looks like crap and you have terrible photos and the marketing looks like crap, you're likely going to attract bad tenants.
Yeah, I see.
If your property looks really good and professional, looks good, and when they contact you, there's hey, here are the minimum requirements. Do you meet these? Before we set up an appointment, we need to screen this. There's an application fee. There's this. People are like, I ain't going there if they're not serious. But if they're serious, they're like, okay, this person takes care of the property.
Yeah.
So to sum it up, you have to treat it like a business. How did I learn that? I read like 2 books on that. I read 2 books and I was like, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
And then I had some systems in place and stuff. It's just like people don't really take the time to learn that stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway.
All right.
I like that you said that. Like, I noticed this a lot. Like, our phones and the internet is like a great tool. But I think people, even sometimes me, like you can use it to like learn stuff, but people use it more like for entertainment. I kind of like stop my sister doing that too. Like, yeah, they go on YouTube, watch whatever, but anything stupid, TikTok.
Yep.
But if you want to learn something, you ask me about, oh, Josh, how do I do this? Yada, yada, yada. I'm like, you can look it up.
I see what you're saying.
Resourcefulness, man. Like we have, and this is part of, we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but like we have everything that we could possibly learn on YouTube and Google and all these places, books, audiobooks. If people just, instead of doing a lot of the habits that have been created to make us lazy and just to make us get used to just scrolling and stuff like that, if you just took that and used it for good towards what you're, that's why the whole why part, the reasons part is so important. Because when I go to bed at night, like I could sit there and scroll and look at stupid stuff, but like I have too big of reasons to do that.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So every time I hear that, that's what I think of. There's this video I saw a couple weeks ago, like a TikTok or something, and this guy says, if you ask a group of people, like, how many of you think you can make $1 million this year? And, whatever, small percent of them is going to raise their hand. Most people are going to say that's hard. But then you ask the same group of people, how many of you will make $1 million this year if your family was going to die or something, if you didn't do it? Then the number of people that think they can do it changes, because the reasoning behind it is now it's a different motivation.
You ever heard the stories of like moms who like a child gets like trapped in a car or under a car, and like there's a story about a woman who's
she turned into like a
literally
Hulk.
picked the car up to get her. It's like that was enough reason.
Which it's crazy to think that reasoning behind things can, change things that much.
It's very much a mindset, man, because you can fall. And listen, I'm not perfect. I fall into these traps too. My wife and I set some goals. This year was related like, hey, instead of, we do find maybe a little bit too much time where we are scrolling after the kids go to bed because it's a long day and we're tired. And it's like, so we've set some goals based on that stuff too. We did that more so last year and kind of beat that habit. But, you've got to find things that there's so many resources to learn stuff. Yeah. Literally, if you read a couple books, you could figure out how to operate how to run a business with tenants. And then it goes to doing it. Like the best advice I would give to somebody is do it sooner than later. Once I bought my first one and I did it, I was like, dude, I gotta do more. But I was so nervous to do my first one.
Right.
After my first one, I was like, dude, I got this.
It's kind of like a roller coaster.
100%.
Well,
you're scared to walk up those steps. You get nervous, but you do it once, you want to go on again. Huh?
See, I would say I'm definitely more on the side where I do try to force myself to take action sooner, but I feel like I know people that they're more so on the side of let me prepare as much as I can. And they're hesitant to get started because sometimes it is scary or it is you don't know what you're doing, right? So you do want to study as much as you can and be ready for the situation. But how you said, a lot of times people who have experience say you have to go and get started yourself to really learn the skills and stuff. There's only so much studying you can do, right?
100%. Yeah, you can have analysis paralysis for sure.
Yeah,
and you can do that to the point where and over educate. The thing is that once you take that first step, like taking that first step is so important. And sometimes too, man, for the people who don't have the money, like let's say you don't have a high earning job, you don't have a high income.
Yeah.
There's so many. If you can get a deal, there's money. I promise you. The money's might not be yours, but if you have a deal, I promise you have an uncle who's like, yeah, I got the money for that. What's it look like? And if you are educated enough to have that, your uncle will probably invest in that,
Yeah.
or your buddy or whatever. There's people out there. The hardest part is the deal. Once you have the deal, the money's there. And so
Yeah.
that's another way where when you can educate yourself, and this is part of, what I'm trying to create within myself too, is I'm creating the track record to that I have the success in this. And then I can go to wealthy friends, clients,
Yeah.
people and say, hey, I have this $15 million piece of property and I myself am investing into it, but I'm looking for a couple investors.
Right.
And because of my track record,
You've
they're
already
going
proved.
to say, dude, whatever. If you think it's a good deal, I'm in.
Yeah.
Now, that's actually one of the ways that I was talking about, like passive income. That's one of the ways, is being an investor in a deal and not doing the deal.
Mm-hmm.
You're an investor in the deal because you got money, right? And that's actually a really good opportunity for people who are high income earners. Buying a house isn't going to change their life. If you're someone's making $200, $300, $400, $500 a year, buying a home, not going to change your life, right? Because you make so much money that $200 a month in cash flow, not a big deal. But if you can take 100, 200 grand and find a good, what they refer to as an operator, and say, I want to invest in this guy. He knows what he's doing. I got 250, but that's not going to do anything for him. I got $500,000, $1 million. I can invest it and be a partner with him. So finding good partners or investors, what we'll refer to as a private investor, is a great way to do it too.
Yeah.
If you've educated yourself and you go find a deal, find a private investor. A private investor is a fancy word for being like, that's your cousin who's got 100 grand. It's that simple, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I told you this would be 3 hours, bro. I told
No
you we could.
problem. No problem.
Yeah, so I do got another question
Yeah,
about the
man.
real estate thing.
Yep.
So when you look at the different areas, so we're in Northwest Indiana.
Yep.
What's some things that you look at when you trying to invest in property, depending on like what area it is? Do you look
Yeah.
at crime, look at where the school systems,
Good
things
question,
like
man.
that?
The answer to that, and you're going to find my answer to most things, is it depends. It depends on what your goal is. So is your goal long term, right? Is your goal cash flow? Is your goal appreciation long term, or is it short term, get out of it within X amount of time? So, for example, for me, I like the A and B areas of Northwest Indiana with good schools because my goal is to keep it for a long period of time. And I'm in a blessed position where I have a good income. I don't need to live off the money, and I'm not trying to quit my job.
I
But
got
for someone who's like, hey, I make 60 grand a year, I have a good job and it's good money, but I just want to get out of it because they hate it, right? Their goal is going to be different than my goal. So their goal may be, I really don't like my job and I need to find a way to replace my income. So that may come from, all right, if I need to replace 60 grand, maybe I want to flip houses, right? And maybe I find an investor who can fund those. You can flip them, or it could be a cash flowing property in an area like a more CD area where you can cash flow more because the prices of the properties are lower. So the answer is it really depends on what your goal is, man. And that's very, very dependent upon the person. If you're someone who's looking for cash flow, you're typically going to go to the areas where prices are cheaper, because the rents are going to cover more and your monthly cash flow is going to be higher. So let's say, I need to make $5,000 a month, right? How do I get there? Well, I need 10 rentals that make $500 a month, for example. Where can I go and find a rental that cash flows $500 a month? It's not going to be Crown Point. It's not going to be Valpo. It's not going to be those Munster. It's going to be usually a East Chicago, a Hammond, Gary, places like that where you can buy for cheaper, and then you can get the rents can offset it. Now, the downside of that is you're going to deal typically with more tenant turnover, maybe more difficult situations, crime, things like that, right? That stuff can happen. So when you're buying in those areas, those are the risks. But for the person who wants to say, hey, I make good money, I want a long-term investment, I'm not trying to replace my income, I'd like to buy in a more expensive area because long-term, I want that 20 years from now, I want that to be worth more. And so I know this area is doing really well. I don't care if it doesn't make me a lot of money. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What? Okay, so you're saying like how often does that turnover really happen?
So it depends. Your typical lease is going to be a year, right?
Yeah.
But it also depends upon some areas. And I don't invest as of now in most of I have 8 in Crown Point, 2 in Lowell. So I'm more like South part of Lake County.
Yeah.
And but so far my experience has been good. But I have friends who invest only in Hammond, and they have awesome tenants. Like they have tons of properties in Hammond, they have tons of properties in Chicago, and they screen a certain way, and they have a great job. But at the same time, you also, dude, you could buy in the Hollywood Hills and get a crappy tenant.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
True.
It doesn't matter. It all just depends on how you screen that person, and sometimes you just get bad tenants.
It'd be luck, honestly.
Especially if you got Diddy at your place, that would be just a disaster.
Well, he's not going to be living nowhere.
Kinda
But
like that one.
going.
Diddy is not one of my tenants.
Okay, one of the things I wanted to bring up was you said you have one Airbnb.
Yes.
Right. So how does that compare to the traditional properties?
Yeah, good question.
What's the major things?
Yeah, so Airbnb is there's a lot more management with Airbnb because you typically, if you're doing a short-term rental, you're going to have, let's say, every 3 to 5 to 7 days you have someone coming in and someone coming out, right? So the key with Airbnb, and there's a couple different resources I can plug you guys with.
No, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I just bought an Airbnb around here
Dude,
last
congratulations.
night. No. I rented
no,
it.
we rented.
one.
No.
We,
Okay.
we were filming a movie, so I bought this Airbnb
Yep.
for one night to make a movie there. But when I looked up Airbnb properties around here, there was barely like 5. I
There's
could
not a
barely.
ton.
Yeah.
There's not a
I mean,
ton.
most of it's gonna be in the city though.
Yeah, a lot of it's in the well, in parts of Chicago you can't have Airbnbs. They don't allow them.
Oh, I remember
yeah,
that. Yeah.
parts of Chicago, like they've outlawed them. But
We've talked about that. Yeah.
yeah, that's
Even-
like hotel lobbying stuff. But yeah, the in Northwest Indiana, there's not a ton. It's usually places. So you can actually, just like you run comps for a house. What's the value of a house if you're trying to sell your property? It's the same thing. You can run comparables for what do properties on Airbnb, what are they making in Hammond, East Chicago, Crown Point, St. John. You can look at that. There's sites that have that information. So, but as far as like managing them and running them, the difference. So first off, typically when you're buying an Airbnb property, it's going to be considered a second home, right? So, and now there's different types of financing. This is where you want to go into educating on this. You can do what's called a DSCR loan, debt service coverage ratio loan. That's based on how much money does it make. And the lender will loan on the property based on the money that it makes, right? So that's a business decision by the bank. But for most people, their first one is a second home loan, which is usually 10% down. And then at that point, you need to know. So before I bought that we have a log cabin on 7 acres, about an hour and a half east of here. In Culver, Indiana. I don't know if you guys know, like Culver Military Academy.
Okay.
Over there, we have a log cabin. It's on 7 acres. We have a pond. We have a pole barn. And so it's like kind of like super remote, but it's a cabin. People love renting cabins, log cabins. So it looks sick. But it's yeah. So people love renting log cabins. So
cool.
I bought this from a
I
buddy of
definitely
mine.
was thinking like, why you picked that?
Log
It's like
cabin.
log cabin. I
Log
got
cabin.
you. Now.
And I also have like a doomsday property. Like it's middle of nowhere. Like like
Oh.
it's like on its well. Like it's cool. But anyway, that's a whole different conversation.
You mean like if the world ends?
Yeah, dude, I got a property. If like I need to get away, like
If
no
they drop
one would
nukes
know
over
where this
here or
was, bro.
something?
Yeah. So we can we'll just go to the log cabin. But anyway, so with Airbnb, you are probably gonna have to put 10% down. Your management's gonna be higher because you have people coming in and out. So you need what one of my mentors in the Airbnb space. His name he goes by Rob Built on YouTube. Good guy to learn from. You know, you can run through his free videos, and then he's also got courses and stuff like that. But you need what he calls like your Airbnb Avengers, which number one is cleaning lady. Your cleaning lady is basically your property manager because she goes in there and she's like, hey, this light bulb's out.
Right.
Hey, this was broken. Hey, this happened. Hey, we need soap, whatever. So she is going to be the person. I say she because we have a woman who does it, but your cleaning person is going to be the person who goes through, and they're going to see it all the time. So having a good cleaning person is the number one key. Second is going to be a good contractor. My father-in-law lives out in that area, and he's a contractor, so I got a great connection there. Third is going to be a handyman. That's also my father-in-law and my dad, who's an electrician. Fourth is a termite pest inspection or pest company because that stuff happens, especially if you have a property like mine in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
You're going to get termites. We get that. So termites. And next, if you have a hot tub or a pool, you need a pool maintenance person. So if you have those people, you can manage it really well. And then there's systems you can set up to automate things.
Okay, so since Airbnb is typically a more short-term
Yes.
thing, that also means you could charge more.
Correct.
By
So correct.
short.
So
So
your
how
cash
does
flow is
that?
going to be higher.
Okay.
So you can earn more money on Airbnb for sure. Our cabin is coming up on earning close to 6 figures in the revenue that it makes. There's expenses within that.
Yeah.
That's the gross that's
Right,
getting
the
up
sales,
there.
yeah.
But there's a mortgage, there's utilities, taxes, everything involved in that. And
Yeah.
so yes, you can earn more and they can cash flow more, absolutely, because you're maintaining more, right? So
Yeah.
typically the more a rule of thumb in real estate, the less you have to manage, the less it's going to cash flow. The more you have to manage, the more it's going to cash flow. So for example, like if I have a triple net lease in commercial real estate, that is basically the holy grail of mailbox money. You're not doing anything, right? You're typically going to make less every month on that deal. The returns are usually going to be lower, but you're not doing much. Now with Airbnb, your returns are going to be higher, but you're managing and maintaining a house where people are
Yeah.
coming in and out, and sometimes having parties and sometimes bringing people in and they're in and out. So you're managing that stuff. So they can make more, but usually have more expenses and you're dealing with communicating more. There's
Yeah.
only so like I can automate a lot of stuff on Airbnb, but I also can't. Like there's some things you can't. Sometimes it's like we have automations for like our messages. Here's our checkout message, right? That's automated. Here's our check-in message. That's automated. But like when it and hey, we like you write a review. That's automated. But if they're like, hey, do you guys have salt, pepper, and olive oil? I can't automate that. I got to answer that. No, I'm pretty sure there is that, right? And so that's where you're providing a service. So there's a little bit more upkeep within the maintenance of it. You can hire a property manager for that, but they're usually 20% of the gross income for an Airbnb.
Okay.
20% is a lot.
How much is it to stay at that cabin per night?
The lowest is $350 a night.
Wow.
So you can stay at a cabin where you can have 14 people stay for $350 a night.
Yeah.
So if you have, you go stay 2 nights and it's $700, split that amongst 14 people.
Yeah.
Do I go get a cabin?
Well,
it's
I
cool,
don't know.
man.
10 of us?
I'll show you, man. I'll link it up here, but it's cool. It's really cool. It's fun, man. It's like middle of nowhere. It's quiet. The sky is like, dude, no light pollution.
See, I can't do that.
Really?
I can't do that.
Sounds like a horror
That's
movie.
not your style.
I'm more of like a city kid.
Yeah,
I
I
need like
feel
a
you,
gas
bro. I
station.
understand.
Gas station like
Hey,
7 miles
there's-
away.
there's a Dollar General 3 minutes down
There
the
you
road,
go.
bro. I promise. But what's cool about
They
this
probably
area,
built it like 6 months ago.
that was like a year ago. And but the thing that's in an area where there's 2 really nice lake communities. So it's
Okay.
right in the middle. There's like 2 lake areas where you go, like people go to boat and
Oh, yeah, kind of like a mini resort, whatever.
yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
But yeah, this is middle of nowhere and
Let
like
me see.
yeah, man.
Wow.
All right, so
Okay, that's
that's
bigger
nice,
than what
yeah.
I was expecting.
no,
That's,
it's like a full log cabin, man.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
It's awesome, man. We got the hot tub and
Oh,
pond
I
in there.
love the hot tub.
yeah, we're gonna stock that pond. We're about to dig that pond out and like stock it. And
That's-
then, so
okay.
You can fish there, go sit and chill, dude. It is.
That
It's
that makes
beautiful.
sense. You get a group of people, $350 a night. That makes sense.
We get we get a ton of young groups of people with friends who are like meeting their friends up and they go there and hang out for a weekend. There's
Yeah.
a ton of people doing that. Like, yeah, we're just chilling with our friends for the weekend.
Yeah.
Cool. Like,
Yeah.
and that's great.
All right.
It's fun.
That's Airbnb versus.
Yes.
Actually, before we go to, I got a lot of questions
Let's go, man.
popping in my head right
I
now.
like it.
Before we get to this one, you want to ask him about the 1% rule?
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, the
Hit me.
1% rule. Yeah, the 1% rule.
Because I always
was-
like getting people's opinion
Yes.
on that.
Yeah, what
Go
was it again? It's like the
Do you-
1% rule
do you
was
remember?
like, no, it's like, I'm trying to remember.
I
The
got it.
It's one of our best TikToks. You don't
So
remember?
I know,
here's how
that's
we're-
what it
Come
had like
on,
I got you.
30,000.
Here's what it means. Let's
You know
say-
what's funny? The comments killed them too.
Yeah, I know.
basically it's whatever property you buy, you want to make sure that the rental
We're-
income is
1%,
1% of the
yeah.
cost.
There we go. I
So
do.
if you
I
buy
do
a property,
remember.
if you buy a property for $200,000, you want the rent for $2,000.
Yeah.
That's the number.
Is that accurate?
It depends. It's going to be my answer almost all the time.
It depends on the location. Depends on the tenant.
Depends on a lot. It depends on a lot. Depends on the taxes. It depends on so many different things. Typically, yeah, it's a good rule of thumb, but it can't always work because it also depends on mortgage rates. Like when mortgage rates went up to
Yeah.
7%, that kind of destroyed that. You know what
Oh.
I mean? Like when mortgage rate before real estate investing got really big, Bigger Pockets really did this. It was the 2% rule. So they literally had it double.
Oh.
They were like, hey, any property you
That's
buy, make sure the rents
insane.
are twice as much. When rental property investing and real estate prices went up, they changed it. They're like, hey, now it's the 1% rule because you can't find places that you can rent out for that much. So
Well, I mean, you,
but
you
yes.
think about a $400,000 house for $4,000
Yeah.
rent. That's insane.
it's not a. I would not. So when you had asked like kind of what do I look for, I'll give you an idea. I look for anything that's like a minimum of 2-bedroom. So 2 to 3 beds. That's probably going to be between on the low end 800 square foot and hopefully over 1,000 square foot.
Mhm.
So ideally, I'm looking for 2 to 3 bedrooms, small places. Hopefully, they have 2 baths. If they have 1, it's fine. But I'm buying something that is likely going to be around 100,000 to 150,000 per unit. That's my goal. So somewhere between there, because if you go search for a house right now, if you're like, I'm going to try to buy a house for 150 grand.
Yeah.
It's really hard, right? Exactly.
Not if you go to Gary.
Right, you can buy them, but dude, but even in Gary,
Even
though,
them, they going up.
even in Gary though, they're getting more expensive.
Man, you
Okay.
see that casino right there?
Yeah.
Prices
Prices
got to
have
go
gone
up.
up.
Yeah.
Prices have gone up. I'm seeing houses 200-300 grand in Gary in some spots.
Oh, my
for sure.
God.
And so but Gary's done very well. But I try to look for in the markets I'm looking at. I want to be around as close to 100 grand a unit as I can, and that's just because the specific reason my strategy is I want to be on the lower income side of housing because it's really in a nice area because it's hard to get low income housing in nice areas. So all the places I own are duplexes in Crown Point and one in Lowell. And it's like, well, if I want to live in this school district or live in this, and we make them look really nice. And it's usually either young couple, single person, or somebody who like just went through a separation and they got kids, they want to stay in the school district, right? But they're really hard to find. I like buying things that are on that affordable price range in nice areas because they can't build them for anywhere near that cost. So if I own something that costs that little, it's only going to appreciate in value. Versus
Yeah.
if I buy something for 400 grand, the average price is 300 in that area, I could potentially lose, on appreciation.
That's
So,
why you like
Yes.
getting houses that needs like a little bit more remodeling.
yes, sir.
to
That's
be
exactly
cheaper.
right. So I can buy it for less. I can renovate it, force the appreciation, and force the value. I just increase my net worth.
Mhm.
And so if I ever need to sell it, it's worth a lot more than what I paid for it. And so I have equity. So if I ever sell, I'm getting a big payday if I need to. And I'm making more money. My mortgage is lower because I bought it for less. And so once I renovate them and get the rents up higher, now my income is coming in as higher.
Yeah.
So I have more cash flow.
See, great. Now, you asked about the 1% thing. Now he's gonna get cussed out on TikTok.
Oh my God. We'll see. We'll see.
The
He-
1% rule is hard to hit.
He
man.
knows what he's talking about. I think he's gonna do just fine on TikTok. Okay, now the next one on my list is this one is not going to be relevant to you if you're not familiar with the Northwest Indiana area. But I am personally interested in asking you about the area around DeMott and Hebron,
Yep.
that area, because it's quite different than what we see over here around
Yeah, it's
Highland, Crown
nothing out
Point.
there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
way
yeah.
different. So as far as buying houses out there,
Yep.
it's typically a lot cheaper. What's your opinion on that?
You know what's funny, man? I made one of the best pieces of content we made in 2024 was a reel that was for the first time in history, and I track numbers every single year, but in the first time in history, it was more expensive to buy a house in Hebron than it was in Munster.
Really?
What? No way.
Yep.
Munster
I'll
has
show you the
Briar
numbers.
Ridge.
I'll show you the numbers. It was
No
it was
way.
more expensive to buy. It was like 365,000 was the average home sale in Hebron in 2024, and in Munster it was like 362. It
No
was more expensive
way.
to buy out there.
Well, I would say it makes sense. Like it's a
No, it
huge.
doesn't.
I mean, you
No,
look
no,
at
no,
Cherville though.
go
You
ahead.
look at Cherville. A whole bunch of business flooding. They're all going east, south.
Sure.
So
Sure,
so-
but Hebron is like Hebron is not Cherville. Those are different. They're different.
So here's what I'll tell you. One of the big things that you found is that number one, there's not going to be more land. Okay, so if
Yeah.
there is a big demand for people who want more space.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I understand this because after I had kids, my wife and I was like, yeah, I get it. Like I want more space, and as I get older, I want to deal with less people. So I'm kind of like, yeah, I want more space. So I think that comes with age a little bit. At the same time, like we live in a great neighborhood. There's a lot of people. But long story short, that area, DeMott, Hebron, that area is done very well because you find a lot of people who live in Crown Point, Valpo, Cherville, St. John, etc. And they want a slower pace, but they also want to find like an acre or 2 acre or 5 acres and buy some land or buy something with more. And so there is more demand in those areas. And what's interesting, man, if you go to those areas like DeMott is awesome because that area like feeds itself. Like you live and you work. You get a lot of people come.
it looks
up
like
to
a
the
tiny
mills.
community. Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're there, it's safe, it's clean. There's not a ton of people. Properties are really well maintained. There's great local small businesses. Like
Yeah.
it's cool. So I'm a big fan of it. Hebron too. Hebron is basically taking like the people who live in Crown Point who are like, it's getting too busy for me. They go to Hebron,
Right.
and so they'll spend good money to live there.
So I mean,
Or even people who live in Portage, same thing.
Yep.
They go to Heap.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Valpo and say 100%.
I mean, would you be able to confidently say that area should continue to keep growing and turn into like a Cherville?
I
at
don't
some
know if
point?
it'll ever get to that point. If it'd be a long time. I think
Okay.
it would get to that point because you look at 41. It's like the amount of commercial that's there.
Yeah.
But I think
I know it looks like Orland Park now.
yeah, right,
Yep.
right, exactly. You got strips of commercial, all that stuff.
St. John has been building a lot. Yeah.
Yep. So, but I think that area will it ever be that size? It'd be a long time before it gets there. But I think you're going to see continued growth over there, and it's a place that I don't foresee values going down anytime soon.
Right. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Next thing on my list
Okay.
is you talked a little bit about educating yourself, right?
Yes.
So whether that's people on social media that you would recommend learning from, or whether that's books or YouTube channels, what are some things that come to mind as far as what should people be learning from?
Yeah, Jim Rohn, who I'll reference again, who's the mentor of Tony Robbins, and one of my mentors said, turn your car into a mobile classroom. So one of the best things I can recommend is when you're in your car,
That's funny.
find something to learn.
Right.
They actually did I think it was Stanford or Harvard, did a study on this. And the equivalent, so the time that within 2 years, if you use your car time to study either ebooks or podcasts, things like that, you can get the equivalent of a 4-year degree in about 2.5 years.
Wow.
Just by spending, and I got to be honest, man, like absolutely. So number one, man, there's a lot of great content on YouTube. There's also a lot of BS, but there's a lot of really good content on YouTube. But and you had asked, like the 18-year-old has a little bit of money. Instead of buying a piece of real estate, I would probably go buy a real estate course or
Okay.
go to a real estate event Go
Okay.
somewhere. Like, I would invest that money more so in me than I would into a deal. 10 grand ain't going to get you a deal.
Yeah.
You could buy a house. And I would recommend doing that because the longer you're in real estate, it's not timing the market, it's time in the market. You guys have heard that.
Oh,
Same
yeah.
thing with real estate. So if I would buy your own house, but 10 grand ain't going to get you an investment property. I would take that and I would put that into a course or put that into mentorship programs or put that into an online course or seminars. Find ways where you can consistently be around other people. Because one of the things that I've found so much benefit in is when I'm in my bubble in Northwest Indiana, people are like, oh, dude, you're killing it and doing great. And then I go somewhere else and I'm like, I suck.
Really?
And that is all, yeah, dude, because there's so many people out there who are just crushing it in so many ways.
Yeah.
And for a while, you can use that can mess you up if you don't have the confidence and self belief in yourself, and it has for me many times. Or you can use that and be like, dude, if they could do that, I could do that.
I do too.
So exactly. So like, if he can do it, I can. And there's so much abundance in this world, man. That's how God made it. That everybody can do it. And so you got to go somewhere outside your comfort zone where you can go learn from people. Go to a seminar. Go to a place, and you'll meet people there. From there, you'll get connected with this person, and then YouTube. Man, I'm telling you, in my car, I'm listening all day for 12 years. 95% of the time, there's either a podcast or an ebook that is in my car.
Yeah.
95% of the time for the last 12 years. And I've learned most of what I know about my sales business, selling, being an agent, being as great of an agent as I can for my clients, being as great of a team leader as I can. And I also invest a lot in coaching. I had a real estate coach when I had no money. I got a credit card. I think the minimum, or my minimum was like $1,000, or my max, whatever it was $1,000 on it. And but it was $650 a month. I got a real estate coach, and I had no money. And I was like, I got to figure this out. So I got a real estate coach. I put it on the credit card, and I had to figure it out. And I paid for a coach and invested in my business, and so in myself, and invested in ways to earn more, to learn more. Right? Those are the things you got to be doing. And there's so many places. So examples. I mean, dude, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn. Read Think and Grow Rich. Read Richest Man in Babylon. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki. There's so many people you can learn from these days.
And when you listen to your audiobooks, your podcast, you got to put the speed at 1.5
I do.
times.
If I do it fast now. I didn't used to do that, but I do it faster now for sure. But yeah, man.
I think that's starting to get common, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like, I think because there's just too much content out there.
Yeah.
Too much content.
Yes. I got to get to the next one, man. I got to get through this one. There's so much else to listen to. Yes.
Next up on my list, I asked you what your favorite thing is, but what is the hardest thing about real estate investing?
It's the first one. It's the first deal.
It's
the first
taking
one.
the first step.
It's educating yourself, and it's the first deal. Once you do the first deal, that is where you either realize it's something you want to do more of or not. Most people, after they do one, they have the experience. It's the scary first step. That's it. Once you get through that, I was in 2020 was the first property I bought. So it's been just over 4 years, coming up on 5 years. And I was in real estate, though, at that point for 5-6 years. And I knew I wanted to invest, but I was just afraid, man. You know, I was afraid. And my buddy Ferris, I shared with you before, he learned about real estate, bought a property, found out he could make money on it, went and bought another one, borrowed against the property to buy another one, and he just, next thing you know, he had 917 6 years later, right?
That's
just went
insane.
for it. You know, for me, it was like and by the way, you don't need 917. You don't need like Ferris is special, man. Ferris is different, right? I'm not like Ferris either, but from my perspective, and Tarek too, his business partner, they're awesome, man. Those guys. But like for me, I'm kind of like, once I did my first one, that was the hardest freaking part. It's like just jumping in and doing it and learning it along the way. The best way to learn is by doing it. And it's funny because like as an athlete, I was always that way. Like, I have to do things a million times till I get it, just repetition after repetition. But once I did, nobody stood in front of a basketball hoop and shot and form shooting for the years of, from 2013 all the way to like 2000. Nobody took more form shots than me in front of a basketball hoop. But once I got into the game, I was like, I need to be shooting more in the game. I need to be shooting more against other people.
Yeah.
You gotta get in the game and do it. That's the hardest part.
So that Ferris guy,
I can see you being like a TJ McConnell type of guard.
Yeah, man. I played. Yeah, good old days. Crown Point High School, man.
So
Good times.
Ferris, does he own like half the houses in Crown Point?
No. He's got apartment complexes in Michigan, in Northwest Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin. He's kind of all over the Midwest now.
Okay, cool.
But dude, they're awesome, man. Those guys are awesome.
All right.
So real quick, was there anyone else in your family into real estate? I know you say your dad after the divorce got into it, but anyone else?
So my dad was an electrician. So he was around the world of house building. And then my mom and my stepdad, previous stepfather, he was a home builder, and so when my mom and him got together and got married, he built houses, but not at like a big scale. He was a custom home builder, so he was a contractor and did that. So when I was 12 years old, my mom and my previous stepfather bought some land to develop it, and they ended up raising money from investors. They had a couple of bigger investors who paid for most of the investment, and then they went and built one house at a time. And over 12, 15 years, they developed the neighborhood. So when I was like 11, 12 years old, I was around it. And so I was learning about houses, like construction style of home and stuff like that. So I was around it then. But they were not like massively successful or anything crazy like that. They just built homes, and that was just kind of how they made money. And but I learned a lot about construction, and so that's helped me a lot as an agent, because I can point stuff out to clients about, hey, in this property there's conduit electrical, hey, there's 200 amp service, there's there's a tankless hot water heater, like that type of stuff gives value to clients, so they understand like, oh, this is or hey man, don't buy this property, this is rough shape. So that I learned a lot from that perspective on like construction.
So what did you go to college for?
I went there for business, which was basically the undecided. You know what I mean? Business was the new undecided.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, yep. So I'm like, because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew at that point I wanted to run my own business and invest in real estate. But
cool.
that was it, man. Yeah.
Next up on our list.
Any other questions?
Oh,
about,
I got lots
real
of
estate?
questions. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Next up on our list, commercial versus residential.
Yeah, so residential is going to have a smaller barrier to entry. And the thing with residential is that it's based very much upon, like, residential, I'll give you a couple examples and ways to invest in residential. One is wholesaling. Okay, so you've heard of this concept. Wholesaling is where you go find a property, a seller who needs to sell. Okay? You don't need any money to do wholesaling. You can go knock on someone's door, you can go cold call, you can send mailers, whatever, but find someone who needs to has a property that's worth 80, but they'll sell it for 60 or 70. And so what you do is you go and negotiate with that seller and say, okay, 60 grand, they will sell it for. I got an investor who would buy it for 70 grand. So you make that $10,000 spread, but you never actually buy the property. You have a one-time closing, you get an assignment fee, make your $10,000, the investor buys it, and they use it for whatever they want to use it for, flipping, rental, whatever. That's step one. That's how most people start investing in residential, is wholesaling, because you don't need your own money in it. Now, wholesaling is basically a sales business, because I got to keep finding people who need to sell. So I'm sales and marketing. Yeah. Like, I'm creating a sales and marketing business. I've got great friends who, if you want a guy on the show who would be great to talk to, is my buddy Seth Hardy, who's one of the 3 partners and owner of the best wholesaling company in Northwest Indiana, Dynasty Real Estate. They're awesome. But that's what they do. That's one of what they do, and they've created a business that does it. That's one. 2 is flipping houses. Everyone knows what that is. Buy for 100, put 50 into it, sell for 200, right? Again, finding the deal is hard. How you find the deal, there's money out there if you find the deal. But that's typically pretty big barrier to entry unless you have investors, because you need a lot of money to do so. And you need access to capital to do that. So that's second, and that value is based on comps, right? So what can it resell for is based on what your neighbors sold for. And that's going to be valuable when I get into commercial. Third is rental properties. We've talked about that. Rental property investing, I can give you guys different resources on ways to understand and run simple numbers. What are your expenses? What's the income? What are your expenses? What does that look like? And what is that property worth? Those are all things. What could they rent for? All stuff. Obviously, most people, when they think about real estate investing, typically think about rentals. And then you can get into other avenues such as commercial. Commercial is any multifamily property, so apartments that are 5 units or more. So 4 units or less is residential. 5 units or more is commercial. Commercial has different type of lending. The lending is based on the deal. So with residential, when you're buying residential properties, it's based on you, right? They look at your debt to income ratio, how much money you make, what's your credit score. With commercial, it's what does the deal make?
Gotcha.
How much money does the deal make? Because if you get a deal, a lender, a bank, they're going to finance that deal if it's a good deal, right? And so with commercial, it's based on the money that it makes. It's all based on income. And so for examples of commercial include multifamily, 5 units or more, industrial buildings like a warehouse, office space like this, or retail space, retail where you have, you've got a Jamba Juice in there and you've got a, whatever, right. All that's retail spaces. Those are just a couple different flex spaces, a couple different examples of commercial properties, but that's based on cap rates, which is all based on the amount of money that it makes, right? And so what's cool about commercial is that, let's say if I buy a residential property and I take the rent from $1,000 a month to $1,500 a month, I didn't increase the value of that house, but it makes more money. With commercial, if I take the income from $10,000 a month to $15,000 a month, I just drastically increase the value of that property.
Oh, I see.
So because it makes more money, and it makes money more on a monthly basis, you can increase your net worth, the value of that property drastically by improving the income and minimizing expenses.
Did you see? Okay, you know the Von Tobel in what is that, Cherville?
Yes.
Did you see they're going to turn that into a Family Express?
Wild.
It's crazy.
Yeah, the owner of Family Express is a very successful real estate investor.
Yeah, he's like from around here,
Yep.
I think. Yeah.
Yep.
But I can't. I mean,
They
that,
do a great
that,
job.
That building's huge. I cannot
Massive.
imagine putting a gas station there.
It's genius.
I don't know how.
Yeah, but
it's
have you ever
in-
been to Buc-ee's? You guys ever
Yes,
heard of
and
Buc-ee's?
that place is amazing.
Crazy.
That
So
place is amazing.
The concept is hilarious because no one else is doing it. But you create
Yeah,
like a
that's
little
true.
mini Buc-ee's around here.
That okay? I guess if you look at it
Kinda
like that,
cool.
that'd be a lot to
What's
pull
Buc-ee's?
off.
That, like they sell food in there too?
Dude,
Oh,
Buc-ee's
you don't
is
even know.
crazy.
It's like a shopping mall, pretty much.
No, dude, it's nuts. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Now let's see, how many
Like,
locations are there?
Buc-ee's? I don't even know, man.
There's not. I thought it was just that one in Tennessee, I think.
They got Tennessee,
Kentucky.
Texas. Yeah, Kentucky. They're down there. But so that's a good example though, like of taking an asset. But at the end of the day, like commercial is based on the money, the income, and the expenses. How much money does it make? What is the net operating income of that property?
Yeah.
That is going to determine the value. So if you take a property that, yeah, there you go.
World's
Dude,
largest gas station.
How many are there? How
they're
many are
huge.
there?
It's a good question. Buc-ee's is sick, man. It's pretty cool. But that's an example, with real estate, commercial real estate, there's usually a higher barrier to entry too. With commercial,
50. Yeah,
50? You want to know what's crazy? So like the last time I drove back from Nashville to here, they advertise that place all along the highway, like
Yep.
like when you're like 150 miles away, you'll keep
it
seeing
just says
signs.
Buc-ee's 150
Yeah,
miles. That's it. It's like, okay, this must be a big deal. It's crazy, man.
Exactly.
It's like a
crazy.
pilot on steroids.
It's insane.
Oh, it's insane.
Wait till you know if you see the inside, it's insane.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Okay, the one thing I wanted to ask you, as far as like knowing about, let's say you're an electrician or you're a carpenter or something, how much of a difference does that make when you know those skills ahead of time going into this versus let's say you have none of those and let's say you have to hire people for all that.
Yeah.
How much of a difference does that make?
I have none of those skills. All
I
right,
thought you
so-
said that you do.
I mean, I understand construction, but I've never touched a hammer on it.
so you don't do most of the work yourself.
None of it.
Okay.
None of it.
Really?
None of it. No, I hire all of it out. And the reason for that though is because that's not my trade is sales, right? My trade is business, real estate business on selling. So my day-to-day life, I'm going to people's homes and I'm helping them sell their house. I'm going to, helping you buy a house. Like that's what I do as an agent.
But doesn't that eat into your sales so much when you have to pay for all those people?
Well, so for people doing the work?
Yeah.
Well, it depends. It depends on what your dollar per hour work is. So now I'm looking at okay, what is it worth for me? If I
The time
take,
to fix that.
correct,
Huh?
I'll make much more money if I just keep selling versus if I go off and I go work on that property.
Yeah, I see.
One time I had to fix my great grandma's sink. It took me the entire day.
See what I'm saying?
I wanted to
I would
die.
be you, bro. So that's how I am. My dad.
I was
can
like
do
16.
everything.
Like, why am I doing this?
Yes,
They say,
yes.
replace
And
it.
so-
I'm like, okay.
But in the beginning, though, early on, some people do that. Like I have a friend who's a plumber, and
Yeah.
out of high school he became a plumber. He's got that trade in. He started buying houses and renovating them all, and doing them all himself. And so he saved a lot of money on the work.
Yeah.
But what's your time worth? And
Yeah.
I have to look at it from that perspective because in sales for me, I just what we'll call we just turned over a unit, which means I took it over, completely redid it. Yeah, isn't this crazy? You can get some, right, you can get some ribs and get a half pound of brisket.
Yeah.
Shout out Buc-ee's.
Yeah, Buc-ee's is a real deal. But for me, it took them 2.5 weeks to renovate that whole property. Flooring, paint, trim, cabinets, countertops, fixtures, everything. That would have literally taken me a year. It took them 2.5 weeks. So what is it
Yeah.
worth for me? What did that cost me? What is my dollar per hour work? And that's not
Opportunity
what I'm good
cost.
with. Exactly. 100%. So for me, it's worth it to pay people, and they do a
Yeah.
great job. But for other people, if you have that skill in that trade, go ahead and do it.
Right.
But true real estate investing, in my opinion, that's a great way to do it, man. Grassroots, bootstrap it. Eventually, you want to get to the point where your money is
It's
what's
working
working
for
for
you,
you.
yeah.
And so for me, that's what I do at this point. But again, I understand not everyone's at that point. But I have 12 years of building my sales business.
Yeah.
So, I've been doing this for a while now. So I use my income to supplement the cost of my
Right.
expenses
And that's smart.
or investing.
All right, last part of my questions for the real estate topics would be what areas of Northwest Indiana are you looking to get into, and is there other areas outside of Northwest Indiana that you think would be good investing
And he
spots?
said now you got
Yeah.
Crown Point
Crown
and
Point and
Lowell.
Lowell.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the most. But I'm to be honest with you, man, I'm open to a lot of places in Northwest Indiana. I would say there's not an area of Northwest Indiana that I would say don't invest in, and I genuinely mean that. You go from Whiting, Hammond, East Chicago, Gary, every single city, town, market, you can make money. Every single one. It's all about the deals and the deal that you get. You can make money in every single one. One area that I would recommend that I think is going to do very well over the next 10 years is going to be Michigan City. And that would be an area I'd recommend looking into.
Interesting.
I'm looking at possibly purchasing 6 units over there right now. And so I think that market is going to do very well. I've represented a lot of clients who have bought a second home or their primary home, $1 million+ dollars.
I've been seeing a lot of people who from the city retire and then they move out there. What's
100%.
that Long Beach too?
Long Beach, man, it's beautiful. Dune Acres, Long Beach.
Long
Porter,
Beach has some crazy houses out there.
Yeah, you'll find some incredible. I mean, there's $3, $4, $5 million houses over there.
Yeah.
You know, most of the properties over there are going to be over $1 million. When you go there, it is not like Northwest Indiana. Like you ever drive through there?
The weird thing is
Go drive through there, man.
A lot of it's like
beautiful.
a sketchy area, and then like the lake houses are amazing.
Beautiful.
My cousin has a lake house over there. It's
you go.
amazing.
And Michigan City, a couple of things to look at. One, they're getting rid of the prison, so the prison's been terminated, and that prison's going to be gone. And then secondly, along the shoreline, there's that big smokestack in NIPSCO. That whole NIPSCO plant's going to be gone. That's all shoreline. So the two things that deter people from Michigan City are the prison and that smokestack. Both of them will be gone within the next 2 to 3 years. So that's huge.
And speaking of smoking too, right by Michigan.
Yeah, that's true.
Nailed it, bro. You nailed it.
Okay. The other thing is, I heard they're getting a train. Weren't they getting a train to Chicago?
Metro to City.
Yeah.
Yep. And so
that's a lot of.
Another way to
catalysts.
look at that too is Michigan City. Also, there's a large real estate firm out of Chicago that's investing, I believe it's like north of $250 million into a mixed-use property. Mixed use is basically like there's retail space, shopping, coffee shops, stuff like that, restaurants on the main level, and everything up is condos and rental properties and stuff like that. So it's like luxury, nice stuff. So when Michigan City gets that from downtown Chicago type money, that's a good example. But I think Michigan City is a great place to look to investing.
Okay, good to know.
Yep.
All right, I think that's it for the real estate topics.
Okay, you want to get into the last couple topics?
What are we on to next?
Oh, we want to talk about Netflix real quick. Let me first say, tell Netflix I apologize. Who's the owner? Whoever the owner is, I apologize.
Not Reed.
As soon as you say it,
Reed something.
Yeah,
I don't know, but I do want to
Reed
apologize.
Hastings.
Reed Hastings. Right? No, is that it? I think you're right. But anyway,
I don't know.
he apologizes.
Yeah, I want to apologize. I was wrong. He was wrong too, but he's not gonna say
What are you
it.
talking about?
But I was wrong for saying Netflix is gonna go downhill. The streaming.
Did we say that? We
Reed
did say that, didn't we?
No, with the
That's why
competitors like
I
Max,
sold my shares. Yeah.
like competitors like Max, Disney Plus, they all fell off.
That's another one of my disappointing.
Disney?
Netflix. When Netflix had its huge. It was the first time they reported a loss in subscribers. 2022, I think. I bought the stock at $200 a share, and then I sold it pretty soon after that, and now the stock is what, 700?
Yes,
Yeah.
something like
So
that.
I missed out on tons of money, and that would have been nice to hold that.
But it's just
whatever.
crazy. Like Netflix, like even at the time, like a lot of people were mad how the price kept increasing, and when the first big increase, everyone like we're gonna get rid of it, and
Yeah.
they kept gaining subscribers, things like
They're
that.
still number one, I think.
And
Yeah.
so this past fourth quarter, they gained 19 million plus users in the fourth quarter, and while revenue and earnings, they also beat too. So
Reed Hastings, you were correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's executive chairman now. But
yeah, so it's just crazy, like the 180 that Netflix did. Just use this.
Just use this.
Just use this. Just use it.
we're running out of Wi-Fi issues.
I was gonna look up. Okay, let's look up this.
Yeah, just use this though.
Netflix. I just want to see the history of this.
But yeah, I think like the main big thing that Netflix kind of transitioned to.
Is
It's
this
not
not
touchscreen. It's not an iPad.
Man, I got touchscreen.
Get an iPad. But no, I didn't like the live streaming stuff, like the Jake Paul,
Yeah.
Mike Tyson fight.
They struggled with that one. That was rough.
Yeah, I mean like it did well like money wise,
Yes,
but like
yeah,
the
yeah.
entire stream was
The
kind of messed
production,
up. Yeah,
Yes, the production was bad.
See, now this is one of those situations where
yeah I know.
Netflix is probably, if we go back to this era, it's probably less of a growth stock than it was at this point. So having it trade at 55 times earnings might be too ambitious there. But this is like when I bought it. This is right where I bought it.
Yeah, it was just,
That's too low. That's kind of ridiculous. So I would say look at what they're.
But
gonna
like the new growth would be with the new streaming stuff they're doing, and they got like a partnership with the NFL.
Yeah, but I would say right now that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Whether or not this is a good time to buy is tough.
I'm not buying. I just want to apologize.
Okay. All right.
I just want to apologize.
All right.
Because it's crazy. Because Disney's probably like, I don't know what Disney's going on with. Like I feel like it's a problem every single month with them.
Yeah, it is.
Bob comes back, he's leaving. He comes back, he's leaving again.
Think about it, and not like one thing. So, all right, Disney did a bad job with knowing who their customer was, and so, for example, they started to make movies and shows that were very not,
Nostalgia, babe.
well, there was a lot of things that were very much like. And it doesn't have to go. They did get political where it was like, all right, here's a show and there's transgenders.
There's a
and there's
transgender
two
cartoon
husbands.
in there.
And I'll be honest, like I have young kids. Those bring questions. My kids are
Yeah.
like, why do they have two daddies? And I'm like,
Right.
I'm not ready to have this conversation with my 4-year-old.
Right.
And so they forgot who their customer was. Their
Yeah.
customer is not kids. Their customer is the parents of the children.
Yeah.
And so like, dude, there's a lot of Disney stuff that I have to watch before my kids do.
That's crazy.
Because my 4-year-old, who's very smart, would be like, "Daddy, what is that?" And it's like, it's fine. That's fine. You have your beliefs, but it's like it's just one of those things where you can confuse kids.
I think
that's one thing that they did a bad job with.
Luckily, this past week we fixed that because Trump has identified there's only two
There's
genders
only two
in the
genders.
country. Luckily, we don't have to worry about that problem anymore. Hard to believe we got to that point, but we're not there anymore.
We're good for the next for 4 years.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it never comes back. I would
good
hope
for 4 years.
I would hope it doesn't come back. All right, Netflix.
But yeah, I'm done with Disney. I'm just done with them. I'm done with them.
Yeah.
What, Disney?
They ruined Star Wars for me.
Yeah.
All the hype's gone.
Yeah.
Marvel's on the decline though too. So
Yeah.
All right, crypto and Trump coin. Did you get anything?
No, I did not. He was talking about this on the way here, but no, crypto. I do. I do see the value in crypto for sure, and I have some friends who've done extremely well. It's a very, very small portion of what I invest in, but I'm not all in. I respect
scared
it
of
and
it.
I like it. Yeah, but I'm not. Again, I invest in what I know,
Yeah.
and I know real estate, so that's mostly where I invest in.
And
So,
that's one of Warren Buffett's biggest rules: invest in what you know.
yeah. And
So
Bitcoin, all that, like I understand why, and
Mhm.
I have friends who have earned tens of millions of dollars.
really,
Yes, yeah,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
from here, friends,
That's
very,
crazy.
very successful.
from
But-
crypto?
Yeah.
Wow.
Crypto and then foreign exchange.
The Forex
stocks,
stuff,
yeah, and
yeah.
Forex, yeah, and they've done very, very well. But yeah, man, it's just not it's not something I know. So no, Trump coin I didn't get into. So, I did not. I heard about it. I was like, he made his own damn. Can he do that? Like,
Yeah, I know.
same thing. I didn't hear about it. Then he sent me like a text message. I'm like, what is this?
yeah.
Because he
Well,
sent me like
okay.
an app link. I'm like,
So-
you playing? You joking?
Well,
with me.
no, the app looks sketchy, but Walter told me to get it. I got it.
It's called like a moon shard.
It's
or
called
something like that.
Moonshot. Yeah. But no, what
App
happened
looks
was my
sketchy.
cousin texted me. He said Trump came out with a coin, and someone said he got hacked because it looks fake, right? Well, I told Walter that night. Walter went and bought the coin at the coin started out at $1.50. Walter bought it at 15.
Wait, so this is like in the past like week or
This
two.
is 2 days ago. Walter bought
So
it.
in
At,
2 days, it's worth like 50 billion.
no, okay. So here's the other way. Here's the other way the coin was set up. For every dollar the coin hits, you could equate the market cap to billions. So pretty much the coin started out at $1.5 billion valuation. The coin was worth 1.5, just $1.50. Then within a couple hours, it went to, this is Saturday night. It went to $15, so $15 billion market cap. Walter bought into that. He texts me, I'm trying to buy it. My funds won't go through. I had a gig that night, so I played the gig, came out of the gig at midnight. The coin's at $35 now.
Yeah, I started at 32, but I was scared
Yes. Well, I was hesitant, but I said, okay, let me just put a couple $100, whatever. I'll mess around.
because by then it was on Robinhood, and that's why I checked Robinhood.
No, this is before that. That's the next night.
Okay.
That's the next. This is before that. This is Saturday night, I think. So I buy it at 35. Then Sunday
Oh,
morning.
so it went down then.
Sunday morning, I wake up.
Okay.
It's $70. So that was the peak. $70. The coin went to. That's a $70 billion market cap right there. And I sold a little bit, and I was like, okay, I'm
In
like,
the span of a day, we're talking about it in a day.
yes, this is 2 or 3 days. It went from $1 billion to $70 billion. So then it hits that $70 point. Then what is it? Monday inauguration. Walter's like, he's like, okay, the coin's gonna go up even more now. It's the inauguration. So on Twitter, I saw that morning that it said Trump didn't talk about the crypto or anything, and that was a big bummer for a lot of the crypto people. So the coin went all the way down to $35 or something. Got cut in half.
Like,
again.
that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like, one person just gotta say something for 10 seconds.
That's how it was.
That's
Go
why-
crypto, and it's
Remember
up.
Elon? Remember Elon on Twitter a
That's
couple
true.
years ago?
That
It's
is
the
true.
same thing.
Dogecoin and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same
man.
thing there.
Yeah.
So,
I feel
and
you.
then and then Walter was telling me, it's like it's the president of the United States coin. It's not like it's not going to be a rug pull like most meme coins, right? Which I can understand that, but it's risky. So right now I'm just kind of holding on to what I got left, and we'll see what happens. But you never know. You never know where this could go. Bitcoin's a $2 trillion valuation, right? We're at
I should have kept it. I
Yeah.
sold it when I first bought it. I bought it like in 50
buy the
something.
Trump coin. It's not too late. I bought mustard coin that morning. I doubled my money in an hour. Okay, I'm telling you. Friday
Mustard coin.
Friday and Saturday.
Mustard.
From Friday night to Sunday night. Any meme coin you were buying,
Yeah, it's
it
going crazy.
just went up. Within an hour or two, you just made like double your money. It was great. I was having so much fun, and then it all came crashing down. on Monday.
See, that's the thing.
It
man.
just
Like,
reminds me of like a Ponzi scheme. Too.
Yeah, it is. It is.
see, that's the thing. I like investing in things I feel like I have more control over.
Yeah.
And I think that's hard. It's like, and
Yeah.
that's why with real estate, it's like it feels like I have a little more control. On the crypto thing,
that's-
it's like, dude,
Well, and you could say even with stocks, that's
Yeah.
true. With real estate, you still have more control over your
Yeah.
money and the result.
Yeah.
Versus stocks is like
Yes.
it's kind of up to a lot of other
definitely
factors.
a pro con. Another
Yeah.
one of those pro cons.
Yeah.
Yes,
I always argue that stocks is better just because it's less work.
it is. Less work.
I feel like the average returns are higher,
Mhm.
which there's different.
Easier to get into too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the thing is and to go back real quick, the answer is you can get a better return for doing less.
Mm-hmm.
The place that's not factored into that is the tax saving
Oh,
portion.
That's very
not.
true.
The taxes, and I think I'd also put leverage or
Yes.
using debt.
Correct.
Probably real estate. Probably even though you could still buy stocks on leverage, it's probably not as good of
Yes.
idea as doing it with real estate.
Yeah,
So,
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, the tax when you factor in tax benefits and you start getting into IRRs, the internal rate of return, and all
Mhm.
that, and especially for somebody who if you can go to the point where your biggest expense in life will be taxes. So
Yeah.
if you can mitigate that, and
Well, did I send you that thing today that said, it said this is the grand scam of the U.S. or whatever. It said you make money, they tax you. You buy something, they tax you. You sell something, they tax you. You invest it, they tax you. It's just endless taxes here.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's
and we
it's
threw tea in a river for 1% taxes.
I
on Disney
know,
years ago.
I know.
And now
We would kill each other for 1%.
it's
yeah. I mean, yeah. You go back
Bro.
to when the country was started. It was
1%.
yeah,
You got
1%.
1%. They're tossing tea in the river, man.
And
But
now
look at us
now-
now. We don't even
We don't
question
toss
it.
tea anymore.
No.
Now we pay 40%
And that's
tax.
it. That's it. It's insane. And where does it go?
I
You know what I
know.
mean? It's wild.
Where does it go? Ukraine. That's where it
We
goes.
can start talking about this. We don't have to go down the rabbit hole, gentlemen.
Okay, we'll save that for the next episode.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
Exactly.
Round of applause for this next topic.
which is
Trump
what?
ends the EV mandate.
Oh, is this good?
Coming back to the real country gas.
Yeah, there we go.
Gas,
Fracking.
gas and nuclear energy. That's the
Dig,
wave.
Dig.
So him and Elon probably think that Tesla is not gonna. It's not gonna be too big of a problem for Tesla. They're probably gonna be fine.
I mean, I think even without the mandate, Tesla was doing fine though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess.
I think that mandating electric vehicles is crazy to think about. First off, when you actually understand the only thing that can get the cobalt necessary needs fossil fuels. Like
Uh-huh.
you don't the equipment that's going and getting the mining for cobalt can't do it on electric.
that
for
part,
equipment
and
is one.
what about getting rid of the battery?
Correct. And so then there's nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
I just think that when you really look at the actual it's a great thought process in theory, but then
Yeah.
to get there and then to maintain it is literally unsustainable. Then you talk about what does that power grid look like to supply power to
Yeah.
all of those every single day? Like that's the problem California has. They
Yeah.
literally don't have the power. Their
Mhm.
grid runs out of power all the time because they can't support all the EVs and the
Mhm.
electric grid that's there. And then you're going to require everyone every single night to charge their cars.
Yeah.
It's just it can't work. So I don't know, man. I don't know. And I've driven a Tesla. They are awesome to drive.
They are awesome.
They're awesome. They're cool, man. But and as Elon says, it makes more sense for a car to be electronic based on how it drives, right? Like the way that they drive. But sustainability and mandating it, I just don't.
It's too extreme right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't see how it would work.
So
I don't think this would be a good day, like outside for an electric car too.
I know.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And then
The battery freeze or whatever.
yeah, man. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had this conversation with so many people on the show before, and I feel like we always just go back to hybrid is a decent option, or we just say that we're going into it too quickly, and that maybe years and years down the road we got to work towards it slowly. You know, we can't just jump into it all right now.
Yeah, I'm probably like the last of a dying breed, but I'm a fan of like the old V8s, V6s.
I'm with you, man.
Like I have a SUV, but I really don't like it.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I would rather like a long size sedan, V8 muscle
Yeah.
car, or something like that. So
Yeah.
I feel you,
I'm
man.
saying get rid of everything. Get rid of SUVs. Go back to where the good times.
And like when
Yeah.
you turn it on, you know what I mean? You feel
Something.
that, and it starts yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
feeling, man. My dad's a big car guy, so he's got his old school Corvette, and he does he works on it and that whole deal. And it's like when you sit in one of those, man, it is pretty cool. But from the perspective of like you had mentioned, nuclear energy, things like that. I mean, and I don't know if you were being sarcastic or you were being serious or not.
I'm being serious.
Okay, perfect. I'm with you. So I think like on the nuclear energy side of things,
Fission is the way.
100. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
I told you
So-
that was
Yeah,
my
well-
stop pick. Get into the
Oh,
nuclear. I think
I
it's a little
love
bit too
that.
early,
Well,
but I think that should
Stick
be.
with it.
Yeah.
And I mean,
yeah, I like that. I'm with you.
I feel like every time I do research on this, like you kind of have the notion in your head, like in the past, it's been that it's risky or it's not safe enough,
Yeah.
right? But I think now when you
You
look
talking
at
about with nuclear?
yes, when you
Well,
look
that's
at,
what it has a bad context because we dropped the bombs, whatever. That's fusion. It's two
Yes,
different
two
things.
different
That's
things.
fusion.
yeah,
We're talking about fission.
yeah, but all the reactors and the meltdowns and stuff, like there's been
Think
some
of how
bad.
much, like, if you can wipe off most of Japan with a bomb, what can we do on the positive side?
Yeah, I know.
What can it?
Yeah.
You know.
I know. Well, hopefully we see some of that in the next couple of years.
And there's a lot that goes in, and a lot of studies and things that actually say nuclear is the best form of energy as
Yeah.
far as actual environmental friendly. As
Oh,
crazy as
really?
that's- yes.
Oh.
Yeah, if you look into that, you'll find a ton on that. There's way better people who can explain that way better than I can. But nuclear energy, from an energy perspective, is the most efficient and actually the most environmental.
That's crazy.
Now,
long
it
term.
might kill us in 100 years. We might become
Right.
like a new Fallout,
I got
but
second head coming out my neck.
we might become like a new Fallout, New Vegas.
8
but
fingers. And,
I would say I could use another like arm or two. I would be okay with that because a lot of times, like I think this morning I was doing something. I was like,
like
I
Ben
need,
10 for forearms.
I was like, I need another hand. So if that happened, I'd probably be fine.
what if we get tails back? What if we just start
Tails?
going tails?
Growing
Like
tails.
it seems
That wouldn't help me any. I don't really need
I
that.
just feel like that would hurt.
Now another head or more eyes, I'm fine with that. I'm cool with that. Especially
Head on a
eyes.
swivel.
If we get tails, we have to get like new pants,
I don't.
little holes right there.
Okay.
I think we're there.
I think we'll.
But on
leave,
Dragon Ball Z, they like
I
wrap it
think
around.
we'll leave the podcast there. I think
Oh,
that's good.
man.
I think that's all for today.
Okay, yeah. Alex, thank you.
Dude,
you know who
thank
you
you
look
guys.
like?
Who? Hit me.
He's a great actor. I love him.
Hit me. I've been hit with a couple.
I think that was one.
Actor
I think that was
options.
one of our best episodes because he had so
Let's
much
go.
good information. To
Have you ever seen
give.
Being Human?
No. I have not.
It's a
I-
good show. You should
Is
watch
it?
it.
I get hit with random actors. Like, where was I at the coffee shop the other day? And somebody's like, "You look like Sam from something." I'm like,
Sam Witwer, right?
I think that was the name.
Oh, who's that? Is that
that the same-
Transformers?
No, you talking about God, what's his name? From Transformers.
Not
You talking
Shia
about-
LaBeouf.
you talking no, not him.
The
Sam
actual
Witwer.
character.
Look like this cat.
Kind of like you. a
Oh,
little.
bro, that's the dude. She said. She
Oh,
said the same
really?
dude.
He's
I'm
a
like,
good actor though.
is he? All right. What show is he in?
I only know like one show. I
Okay,
know
alright.
Being Human. I used to watch that on
Yeah.
Sci-Fi when I was younger.
Mm.
It's kind of weird. It's about like werewolves, vampires,
Yeah.
ghosts. It's kind of like what's that one
too
show?
scary for me.
Twilight,
Twilight.
but like more for like young adults
Oh,
instead
okay.
of like
okay.
girls.
I got you. Yeah. That makes sense.
And then he was playing like on the video games like a Star Wars character.
Cool.
Oh, he has another game too, the Zombie Invasion, Zombie Apocalypse. It's kind of like Last of Us. He rode around with like a motorcycle.
I don't know
Good
what you're
game.
talking
Good- good
about.
game.
All right, you ready to wrap this up?
I'm ready.
Okay,
Okay,
let's
I'm
call it a day. Thank you very much for watching or listening.
Yeah, what's my motto again? I kind of forgot it.
Your motto is to greener days ahead.
I like that one. I like that one.
it too.
But yeah, thank y'all again for tuning in. We'll be posting this. We'll be posting this on Thursday. So 2 days. We'll be on the radio too, and YouTube video will be posted on Friday. So
And TikTok and Instagram.
absolutely, y'all have a good one. And like Nico said, my motto to greener days ahead. Bye bye.
That's right.